I stared at my reflection in the mirror, adjusting my blazer for the 100th time while my daughter Sasha twirled around the bathroom in her princess dress. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here I was, prepping for the biggest interview of my career, and my usually reliable babysitter had just texted to cancel. Single mom life at its finest. "Mommy, can I wear this to Aunt Livia's?" Sasha asked, her big brown eyes sparkling with hope. "Of course, sweetie," I smiled, though my stomach was in knots. I'm Violet, and at 32, I've learned that sometimes the universe forces you to make choices you'd rather avoid. Like calling my younger sister Livia for help. The doorbell chimed, and Sasha raced to answer it. "Aunt Livia!" "There's my favorite niece." Livia's voice carried that familiar sugar-sweet tone that always set my teeth on edge. She swept in wearing designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. "Thanks for doing this on such short notice," I said, gathering my interview materials. "I really appreciate it." "Oh, please." Livia waved her hand dismissively. "What are sisters for? Besides, Mom would kill me if I didn't help out her only grandchild." I bit back a response about how she'd canceled on us 3 times before. "Sasha's already had breakfast. There's lunch in the fridge, and emergency numbers are on the—" "Violet, relax," Livia interrupted, dropping her expensive handbag on my worn couch. "I've got this. It's not rocket science." "Right." I knelt down to hug Sasha. "Be good for Aunt Livia, okay? Mommy will be back before dinner." "Can we play dress up?" Sasha asked Livia, clutching her aunt's designer jeans. "Sure, sweetie. We'll have so much fun." Livia's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I hesitated at the door, my hand lingering on the knob. Something felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on it. "Oh, and Livia? Please don't leave the apartment. Sasha's been fighting a cold." "God, you're such a worrywart," Livia laughed. "We'll be fine. Go ace that interview." As I walked to my car, my phone buzzed. It was Todd, my best friend and voice of reason. "You actually left Sasha with Livia?" His disbelief crackled through the speaker. "I didn't have a choice," I said, starting the engine. "Besides, she's family." "Yeah, the same family that borrowed your prom dress and returned it with wine stains. The same sister who—" I know. I cut him off. "But she's changed. Mom says she's really grown up since getting that job at the gallery." Todd snorted. "Your mom still thinks Livia's finger painting should be in the Louvre. It's just for a few hours," I insisted, pulling onto the highway. "What's the worst that could happen?" "With Livia? Do you want that list alphabetically or chronologically?" I laughed despite my anxiety. "I've got to focus on this interview. The promotion would mean everything. Better hours, better pay, maybe even a house with a yard for Sasha." "Just be careful," Todd said. "And call me after?" I promised I would, and hung up, trying to push away the nagging doubt in my gut. Through my rearview mirror, I could see my apartment building shrinking in the distance. The last thing I noticed was Livia's face at my living room window, phone pressed to her ear, watching me drive away. My keys felt heavy in my hand as I dropped them into my purse. The emergency cash I kept hidden in my bedroom drawer flashed through my mind. $2,000 saved over countless overtime shifts. But this was Livia, my little sister, the golden child who could do no wrong, at least in our parents' eyes. Still, as I merged onto the interstate, I couldn't shake the memory of last Christmas, when Mom's antique bracelet went missing during Livia's visit. Or the time my credit card showed mysterious charges after I'd let her crash on my couch for a weekend. Everyone had brushed it off. Mom said I was being paranoid. Dad suggested I was just jealous of Livia's success. But as I pulled into the parking lot of the office building where my interview awaited, I sent up a silent prayer that I was wrong about the unease churning in my stomach. That for once, Livia would prove everyone right about her being the perfect, responsible sister she pretended to be. If only I'd known then what was happening back at my apartment, I would have turned that car around so fast. But hindsight, as they say, is 2020, and some lessons you have to learn the hard way. The interview had gone perfectly. I practically floated up the stairs to my apartment, already imagining how I'd celebrate with Sasha. Maybe ice cream or that new Disney movie she'd been begging to see. But the moment I opened my door, my heart stopped. Sasha. My voice echoed through the eerily quiet apartment. Livia? A small sniffle came from the direction of Sasha's room. I found her curled up on her bed, still in her princess dress, now stained with what looked like chocolate ice cream. Baby, what's wrong? Where's Aunt Livia? She left, Sasha whispered, wiping her nose with her sleeve. A long time ago. She said she'd be right back, but... The room spun. She left you alone? For how long? After lunch. Her friend called, and she said she had to go shopping. Sasha's lower lip trembled. I was scared, Mommy. I pulled her into my arms, fury building in my chest. It's okay, baby. You're safe now. Did you eat dinner? She shook her head. I didn't want to use the stove by myself. My 5-year-old had more sense than my 28-year-old sister. I kissed Sasha's forehead and tried to keep my voice steady. Let's get you something to eat. And then... The words died in my throat as I walked into the living room. Really looked at it this time. My laptop was missing from the coffee table. The vintage vase Mom had given me for my birthday. Gone. With trembling hands, I rushed to my bedroom. The dresser drawer was open, the false bottom displaced. My emergency cash was gone. No, no, no. I yanked open my jewelry box. Empty. Even the pearl necklace Grandma had left me. My phone buzzed. A text from Livia. Sorry, sis. Had an emergency. Hope the interview went well. I called her immediately. Straight to voicemail. You've reached Livia. Leave some love. Where the hell are you? I snarled into the phone. You left my daughter alone? And you stole from me? Answer your damn phone. I called Todd next, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. She did what? His voice cracked with disbelief. I can't even... I was hyperventilating. She left Sasha alone for hours. Hours, Todd, and she took everything. I'm coming over. Have you called the police? Not yet. God, what will Mom and Dad say? Screw what they say. This isn't about their precious golden child anymore. She left a 5-year-old alone and robbed you blind. Call the cops. Now. After hanging up, I found Sasha in the kitchen, attempting to make a sandwich. My heart broke all over again. Baby, I'm so sorry, I whispered, taking over sandwich duty. This is all my fault. Is Aunt Livia in trouble? Yes, sweetie. Big trouble. As if on cue, something crinkled under my foot. A receipt, partially hidden under the fridge. I picked it up. Nordstrom, time-stamped 3 hours ago. Over $2,000 in purchases. Exactly the amount from my emergency fund. My phone buzzed again. Mom. Violet, why are you calling your sister's phone nonstop? She just told me she had to leave Sasha with you early because of food poisoning. Poor thing's been sick all afternoon. The sandwich knife clattered into the sink. What? She's resting at our house now. Really, Violet, you should be more understanding. She did you a favor? A favor? I laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. Mom, she abandoned my daughter. Alone. For hours. And she stole from me. Silence. Then, don't be ridiculous. Livia would never... Check her shopping bags, Mom. The ones she probably brought over. Check the timestamps on the receipts. Better yet, ask her where she got the money for her shopping spree. You're just jealous, Mom snapped. You've always been jealous of your sister's success. I'm sure this is all a misunderstanding. I hung up. Sasha was watching me with wide eyes, her sandwich forgotten. Mommy, are you crying? I touched my cheek. Sure enough, it was wet. But these weren't sad tears anymore. They were angry ones. My phone buzzed one final time. A social media notification. Livia had just posted a photo of herself at some rooftop bar, sporting a new designer outfit, tagged with, "Treating myself, blessed life." That's when I remembered the security camera I'd installed last month, after a string of break-ins in the building. The one pointed right at my living room, recording 24/7 to my cloud storage. "Todd?" I called him back, my voice steel-edged. "Before you come over, I need you to stop and get me a USB drive. A big one. I've got some footage to download." The golden child's reign was about to end, and I was going to be the one holding the match that burned her crown. Todd arrived 30 minutes later, finding me at my kitchen table with my backup laptop. Sasha finally asleep in her room after the emotional day. He placed a USB drive and a pint of ice cream in front of me. "Thought you might need both," he said, pulling up a chair. "I filed the police report," I said, logging into my cloud storage. "But we both know how this will play out. Mom and Dad will defend her, probably offer to pay me back themselves, and Livia will cry her way out of consequences. Again. Unless," Todd gestured to my laptop, "unless I have proof." I clicked on today's footage. Concrete, undeniable proof. The security camera's view filled the screen. There was Livia, checking her phone the moment I left. She made a call immediately. "Hey, babe." Her voice crackled through the speakers. "She's gone. Yeah. I know where she keeps it. No, the kid won't be a problem." Todd's hand clenched into a fist. "Jesus." We watched as Livia rummaged through my bedroom, emerging triumphant with the cash. She stuffed it into her designer purse, then systematically went through the apartment, collecting my valuables. "Aunt Livia?" Sasha's voice came through clearly. "I'm hungry. Here's some money, sweetie. Order a pizza." Livia tossed a 20 on the table, out of Sasha's reach. "But Mommy says I'm not supposed to answer the door when—" "Then make a sandwich or something. I've got to run. Don't tell your mom, okay? It'll be our little secret." The footage showed Livia leaving, the door clicking behind her. Sasha stood in the middle of the living room, looking lost. "I'm going to be sick," I muttered. "Keep watching," Todd said grimly. 3 hours of footage showed Sasha trying to entertain herself, getting increasingly anxious as time passed. She tried calling Livia multiple times from the landline. No answer. "I've seen enough." I stopped the playback, my hands trembling with rage. My phone lit up with a text from Khalil, my former colleague. "Hey, heard about the interview. Drinks to celebrate? Can you come over instead?" I texted back. "Need your expertise on something." Khalil arrived 20 minutes later, his IT background proving invaluable as he helped me download and format the footage. "We should make copies," he suggested, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "Multiple formats, stored in different places. Cloud backup, USB drives, everything." "You think she'll try to delete it?" "If she's smart." He glanced at me. "But from what you've told me, she's not used to covering her tracks. She's used to getting away with things." My phone buzzed again. Dad this time. "Violet, this has gone too far," he started without preamble. "Your mother is beside herself. Livia's crying her eyes out." "Is she?" I cut in. "Is she crying about abandoning her niece? About stealing from her sister? Or is she crying because she finally got caught?" "She says she had an emergency." "Put her on the phone." A pause, then Livia's voice, trembling perfectly. "Vi, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to be gone so long. I got sick, and then my phone died. Save it." I watched Khalil give me a thumbs up as he finished backing up the footage. "How was the rooftop bar, Livia?" "Must have been fun, spending my emergency fund on cocktails." "What? I don't know what you're talking about." "Check your Instagram. Or should I do it for you? Show Mom and Dad the timestamps? Better yet, should I show them the security footage of you robbing me blind and abandoning my daughter?" Silence. "That's right, sis. Every moment. In high definition. With audio." You were recording me?" Her voice turned sharp. indignant. That's illegal. Actually, Khalil called out, loud enough for her to hear. Security cameras in private residences are perfectly legal in this state, especially when there's clear signage in the building entrance. More silence. Then Dad's voice returned. Violet, let's discuss this as a family. Come over tomorrow. We can sort this out. Sure, I said, surprising them both. Family meeting sounds perfect. I'll bring snacks. Maybe we can watch a movie together. I hung up before they could respond. You're really going to show them? Todd asked. Every second. I closed my laptop. They want to keep pretending she's perfect? Fine. Let them watch their perfect daughter in action. Khalil handed me a USB drive. It's all backed up. But Violet, are you sure about this? Family drama like this? Once it's out there? She left my daughter alone, I said quietly. Scared and hungry. She stole the money I saved for emergencies, for Sasha's emergencies. She's not getting away with it this time. I looked at the USB drive in my hand, thinking of all the times I'd stayed quiet. All the times I'd let Livia's behavior slide to keep the peace. Tomorrow, I said, the golden child loses her shine. Todd and Khalil exchanged glances, but I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt powerful. In control. Let them all see who Livia really was. Let them try to explain this away. The truth was about to have its day. The next morning, I dropped Sasha at her friend Emma's house for a playdate. No way was I exposing her to the incoming family drama. As I pulled into my parents' driveway, Khalil's car was already there. Moral support, he said, falling into step beside me. Plus, I figured they might need someone to explain the technical aspects of the footage. You know, in case they try to claim it's fake. My hand tightened around the USB drive in my pocket. They would try that, wouldn't they? Before I could ring the doorbell, Mom threw the door open. Her face was pinched with worry, but her voice was pure steel. Violet, I hope you're ready to apologize to your sister. Oh, I'm ready for something all right. I walked past her into the living room. Dad sat in his usual armchair, while Livia perched on the couch looking like a martyred saint in an expensive white dress. Her eyes were red-rimmed, probably spent all morning practicing her crying routine. Who's this? Dad gestured to Khalil. IT specialist, Khalil said smoothly, setting up his laptop. I'm here to verify the authenticity of the security footage. Livia's face went chalk white. This is ridiculous, Mom huffed. We don't need to. Actually, we do. I pulled out the USB drive. Because I'm done pretending. Done watching everyone make excuses for her. Done being the bad guy for calling out her behavior. Vi, please, Livia whispered, tears already forming. I said I was sorry. Sorry you got caught, you mean? I nodded to Khalil, who connected his laptop to the TV. Let's watch what sorry looks like. The footage started playing. The room fell silent, except for the audio from the TV. We all watched Livia's phone call, her methodical theft, her casual abandonment of Sasha. Mom's hand flew to her mouth when she saw the money being stolen. Dad's face grew darker with each passing minute. But it was the footage of Sasha, alone and scared, that finally broke them. Turn it off, Dad growled after watching Sasha try to call Livia for the third time. I've seen enough. But there's 3 more hours. I said turn it off. He rounded on Livia. How could you? She's 5 years old. Livia burst into tears. Real ones this time. I was going to come right back. But then Jessica called about this amazing sale. A sale? Mom's voice cracked. You left your niece alone for a sale? And stole my emergency fund to shop with, I added. Don't forget that part. I was going to pay it back. Livia stood up, mascara running. Vi's always so uptight about money, and I knew she wouldn't understand. Understand what? I stepped closer. Understand that you're a thief? That you're so selfish you'd put my daughter in danger for a shopping spree? That's not fair. I'm not. Not what? Not responsible? Not trustworthy? Not the perfect daughter everyone thinks you are? Violet, Mom started, but Dad held up his hand. No, Margaret. Not this time. He turned to Livia. Where's the money? I spent it. And the jewelry? Livia's eyes darted to her oversized purse. Dad snatched it before she could stop him, dumping the contents onto the coffee table. Out tumbled my grandmother's pearls, along with other pieces I'd thought were gone forever. You brought them here? I stared at her. Were you going to hide them in Mom's jewelry box? Make me think I'd lost them? Her silence was answer enough. The police report's already filed, I said quietly. But I'm willing to drop it if you pay me back. Every cent. And you stay away from my daughter. You can't do that, Livia looked wildly at our parents. Mom, Dad, tell her she can't. Can't what? Dad's voice was ice. Can't protect her child? Can't demand justice for theft? What exactly can't she do, Livia? My phone buzzed. A text from Todd. How's it going? Need backup? It's done, I typed back. The crown's not just tarnished. It's shattered. Looking up, I watched my sister crumple onto the couch, her perfect facade finally broken. Mom had sunk into Dad's chair, aging years in minutes. Dad was writing a check with shaking hands. This covers the cash, he said, holding it out to me. We'll sell her car for the rest. Daddy, no! Livia wailed. Enough! His shout made us all jump. You're 28 years old, Livia. It's time you learned actions have consequences. I took the check, then gathered my grandmother's pearls from the table. Khalil quietly packed up his laptop. I'll see myself out, I said, pausing at the door. Oh, and Livia? Next time you're short on cash, try getting a job. It's what the rest of us do. The door closed on her fresh sobs. But for once, I didn't feel guilty. Some lessons have to hurt to be learned. And this one was long overdue. 3 days passed in a blur of missed calls and emotional text messages from Mom. Dad had sold Livia's car, as promised, but the aftermath was messier than I'd expected. I was picking up Sasha from school when my phone buzzed with yet another family bombshell. Have you seen Livia's Facebook post? Todd's voice was tense. I blocked her on everything. I buckled Sasha into her car seat. Why? She's playing victim. Hard. Claims you set her up, installed the camera to trap her, that you're trying to ruin her life because you're jealous. Your mom's commenting in support. My hands tightened on the steering wheel. Of course she is. There's more. She's saying you've always tried to turn the family against her, that you're using Sasha to manipulate everyone. Using my daughter? The words came out as a snarl. The one she abandoned? Mommy? Sasha's voice came from the back seat. Are you mad? I forced a smile into the rearview mirror. No, baby. Just grown-up stuff. When we got home, Khalil was waiting outside my apartment. You've got company, he warned. Your mom's been here for 20 minutes. Great. Just great. Sasha, honey, why don't you go with Uncle Khalil to get ice cream? I handed him my keys. Use the back entrance. Once they were gone, I climbed the stairs to find Mom pacing outside my door. Finally! She rushed toward me. We need to talk about this vendetta against your sister. Vendetta? I unlocked my door, letting her follow me inside. You mean holding her accountable? She's devastated. The car was her independence, and now? My emergency fund was Sasha's safety net, I cut in. But Livia didn't care about that when she stole it, did she? She made a mistake. No, Mom. A mistake is forgetting to return a phone call. A mistake is running a red light. What Livia did was a choice. Multiple choices, actually. All of them selfish. All of them cruel. Mom sank onto my couch. She's talking about moving away. Says she can't handle the family tension. You mean she can't handle consequences? Why are you being so hard on her? I pulled up Livia's Facebook post on my phone and thrust it at her. Why are you defending this? She's lying about me, about the situation, and you're supporting it. Mom read the post, her face paling. She's just hurt. Hurt? I'll tell you about hurt. I pulled up the security footage on my TV. Watch it again. Watch your granddaughter spend hours alone, scared, calling for help that never came. That's hurt, Mom. The footage played. This time, Mom didn't look away. She could have been injured, I continued. She could have tried to cook something and started a fire. A stranger could have come to the door. Do you understand what could have happened? Tears rolled down Mom's cheeks. I don't know how we got here. We got here because you and Dad never said no to her. Because she never had to face consequences. Because it was easier to believe her lies than admit she wasn't perfect. My phone buzzed with a text from Todd. Livia's live on Instagram, crying about family betrayal. Comments are getting ugly. Let her cry, I said aloud. Let her post. Let her play victim. The truth is already out there. Mom stood up, wringing her hands. What do you want me to do? Stop enabling her. Stop defending her. Let her face reality for once in her life. And if she really does leave, then she leaves. But she doesn't get to rewrite history on her way out. She doesn't get to make me the villain in her story. A key turned in the lock. Khalil and Sasha returning with ice cream. Mom quickly wiped her eyes. Grandma! Sasha ran to her, chocolate already smeared on her face. Want some ice cream? Mom hugged her tight, too tight. No, sweetheart. Grandma needs to go home and think about some things. At the door, she paused. Violet? I'm sorry. Not just for today, but for a lot of things. After she left, Khalil showed me his phone. Livia's Instagram live had ended, but the comments remained. People weren't buying her story. Former classmates, old co-workers, they were sharing their own experiences with her manipulation. The truth has a way of coming out, he said quietly. I watched Sasha happily eating her ice cream, safe and loved, and completely unaware of the family drama swirling around her. That's how it should be. She deserved better than what Livia had done, better than what my parents had enabled. Let Livia post what she wants, I said. The security footage doesn't lie, and neither do her actions. Sometimes the best revenge is just letting someone's true colors show. And show they had, in vivid, undeniable detail. A week later, my phone lit up with the news I'd been waiting for. I got the promotion. As I sat at my desk reading the offer letter, another email popped up. From Dad. Family dinner tonight. Non-negotiable. Your sister's making an announcement. My stomach clenched. I called Todd immediately. She's probably announcing she's moving to Paris or something equally dramatic, he said. Whatever it is, I'm not going alone. You free tonight? Wouldn't miss it. Want me to bring popcorn? I arrived at my parents' house with Todd and Khalil flanking me like bodyguards. Sasha was at a sleepover. I wasn't taking chances with family drama tonight. Livia's car was gone from the driveway, replaced by a beat-up Honda Civic. The sight gave me a grim satisfaction. Mom opened the door, her smile strained. Violet, I didn't know you were bringing guests. Support system, I said, walking past her. Since Livia brought her flying monkeys last time, the living room was tense. Dad sat in his usual chair, looking tired. Livia perched on the couch, wearing significantly less expensive clothes than usual, her designer bag replaced by a canvas tote. Really? She snapped when she saw Todd and Khalil. You brought backup? Witnesses, Todd corrected cheerfully. Hi, Mr. and Mrs. M. Dinner was awkward. Mom's usually perfect pot roast was overcooked, and nobody seemed interested in small talk. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Livia, you said you had something to tell us? She straightened up, hands clasped dramatically in her lap. Yes. I've been doing a lot of thinking about everything that happened. You mean everything you did, I muttered. Todd kicked me under the table. I've started therapy, Livia continued, ignoring me. And I've realized some things about myself, about my behavior patterns. Mom beamed. That's wonderful, sweetheart. I'm also... Livia took a deep breath. I'm moving out of my apartment, into a shared house with roommates. It's all I can afford now, thanks to certain people. Her eyes shot daggers at me. Thanks to your own actions, Dad corrected firmly. Continue. Right. Well, she shifted uncomfortably. Part of my therapy is making amends. So, I'm sorry, Violet, for taking the money and the jewelry and leaving Sasha alone. It was wrong. The words sounded rehearsed, empty. Before I could respond, she pulled an envelope from her tote. Here's the first payment. I got a job at a coffee shop. It's not much, but I'll pay back everything. Eventually. I opened the envelope. $200. A fraction of what she'd stolen. How noble, I said flatly. Is this the part where we all hug and pretend everything's fine? Violet, Mom warned. No, let her speak, Dad interrupted. She has the right. You're damn right I do. I stood up, hands pressed against the table. You want to make amends? Start by taking down those lying social media posts. Admit publicly what you did. Stop playing victim while painting me as the villain. Those posts are my truth, Livia shot back. My feelings are valid. Your feelings? I laughed incredulously. What about Sasha's feelings? Want to hear the nightmares she's had? How she's afraid to be alone now? Livia's face crumpled. That's not fair. I'm trying here. Trying to save face, maybe. Khalil spoke up quietly. Real remorse doesn't come with a social media campaign. Nobody asked you, Livia snapped. Actually, Dad said, he's right. Taking responsibility means accepting the full consequences, Livia, including damage to your reputation. But no buts. Dad's voice was firm. If you're serious about making amends, start with the truth. All of it. Silence fell over the table. Livia's hands trembled as she pulled out her phone. We all watched as she navigated to her social media accounts. Fine, she whispered, and began typing. Moments later, our phones buzzed with a notification. Her new post was simple. Stark. I need to correct my previous statements. I stole from my sister and abandoned my niece. The security footage was real. My actions were inexcusable. I'm sorry for lying and trying to shift blame. I'm getting help and working to make things right. Now delete the other posts, I said. One by one, her previous accusations disappeared. Happy now? She asked bitterly. No, I replied honestly. But it's a start. Mom tried to salvage the evening with dessert, but I'd lost my appetite. As we left, Dad pulled me aside. She's trying, he said softly. Is she? Or is she just trying to repair her image? He sighed. Time will tell. But Violet, I'm proud of you. For standing your ground. For demanding better. I hugged him briefly, then joined Todd and Khalil outside. Well, Todd said as we walked to our cars. That was a performance, I finished. But at least now everyone knows which version is real. The truth was out there, permanently. Whether Livia's remorse was genuine or not, she couldn't hide from it anymore. And neither could anyone else. 2 weeks after the dinner, I was helping Sasha with her homework when someone knocked on our apartment door. Through the peephole, I saw Livia, wearing a coffee shop uniform, looking nothing like her former polished self. What do you want? I called through the door. To talk. Please, Vi. 5 minutes. I opened the door but blocked the entrance. Talk. She held out another envelope. This week's payment. Plus, she pulled something else from her bag. Sasha's baby book. I found it when I was packing up my apartment. I took it years ago because I was jealous of you being a mom, of how Dad looked at Sasha. My hand shook as I took the worn pink album. You stole her baby book? I told you. I'm trying to make things right. Her voice cracked. Can I see her? No. Vi, please. You lost that privilege when you left her alone. I clutched the baby book tighter. Actions have consequences, remember? But I'm in therapy. I'm working a real job, living with roommates, paying you back. Doing the bare minimum doesn't make you a hero, Livia. Is that Aunt Livia? Sasha's small voice came from behind me. Before I could stop her, she squeezed past me to the doorway. Livia's face lit up, but Sasha stepped back, pressing against my legs. You left me alone, Sasha said quietly. Livia knelt down. I know, sweetie. I'm so sorry. I was scared. I was wrong, very wrong, but I'm trying to be better. Why did you take Mommy's money? The simple question seemed to hit Livia harder than any adult confrontation. She sat back on her heels, mascara starting to run. Because I was selfish and stupid and a very bad aunt. And my necklace, I added, the one from Grandma? Because I wanted what you had. Livia's voice was barely a whisper. Your strength, your independence, your daughter's love. I thought if I took your things, I'd somehow take your life too. That's not how it works, Sasha said, with all the wisdom of a 5-year-old. You can't take people's lives. You have to make your own. Livia's sob echoed in the hallway. When did you get so smart? Mommy teaches me things, like how to be brave and how to tell the truth. I pulled Sasha closer, protective and proud. Can I show you something? Livia pulled out her phone, hands trembling. She pulled up a website, her new blog. The latest post was titled, My Journey to Rock Bottom, How I Lost My Family's Trust. I'm writing about everything, she said. The real story. No more lies, no more excuses. Just truth. I scrolled through the post. It was raw, honest, ugly in its self-reflection. She'd included screenshots of her previous social media lies, followed by detailed corrections. Mom and Dad haven't seen it yet, she continued. I wanted you to see it first, because you deserve the truth before anyone else got it. My phone buzzed. A text from Todd. Check your email, now. I opened my inbox to find a forwarded message from my company's HR department. Livia had sent them a long email, explaining how she'd almost sabotaged my promotion by spreading lies, apologizing for any damage to my reputation. I sent those to every place I badmouthed you, Livia said quietly. Your gym, Sasha's school, everywhere. I'm owning all of it. Why now? Because my therapist said healing starts with honesty, and because... She looked at Sasha. Because I want to be worthy of being her aunt someday. Sasha tugged at my sleeve. Mommy, can we show Aunt Livia my new dance? The one from class? I hesitated, studying my sister's face. The designer makeup was gone, replaced by exhaustion and something else. Humility, maybe. Real humility, not the performed kind. 5 minutes, I said finally. In the living room, where I can see you both. Livia's smile was watery but genuine. Thank you. As Sasha excitedly pulled her aunt inside, chattering about dance class, I sent a quick text to Dad. Check Livia's blog. I think she might be actually changing. His response came quickly. Actions speak louder than words, but words are a start. I watched Sasha demonstrate her dance moves, Livia clapping with genuine enthusiasm. The sight stirred complicated emotions. Hope, wariness, a reluctant softening. Again, Sasha demanded, and Livia laughed. A real laugh, not her usual practice tinkle. Maybe Dad was right. Words were just a start. But for the first time since this all began, it felt like an honest one. The autumn wind scattered leaves across my parents' backyard as I watched Sasha help Dad rake them into piles. Inside, the sounds of dinner preparation filled the kitchen, where Mom was teaching Livia how to make Grandma's secret recipe stuffing. "First time she's trusted Livia with that recipe," Todd remarked, joining me at the window. "Progress?" "Small steps." I handed him a mug of coffee. "But real ones." Livia had stuck to her word over the past months. Weekly payments from her coffee shop job, consistent therapy sessions, honest blog posts about her journey. She'd even started a support group for other people working to rebuild family trust. The doorbell rang, Khalil arriving with his famous pecan pie. As he set it on the counter, Livia looked up from her stuffing duties. "Hey," she said softly. I read your comment on my latest blog post about enabling behavior and family dynamics. It helped." "Good," Khalil replied. "Because you've got a lot of readers now. People need to hear this stuff." "Speaking of hearing things," Mom interjected, "Violet, tell them your news." I smiled, fingering the business card in my pocket. The promotion came with an unexpected bonus. They're starting a new department, and they want me to head it. "That's amazing." Livia's genuine enthusiasm still caught me off guard sometimes. "Wait, isn't that what you always wanted? Leading your own team?" "It is." I watched her carefully. No flash of jealousy, no subtle undermining, just pride and excitement. "Mommy!" Sasha burst through the back door, leaves in her hair. "Can Aunt Livia help me with my science project tomorrow? She knows all about plants from the coffee shop's garden program." I caught Livia's hopeful glance. She hadn't asked to be alone with Sasha since that day, respecting my boundaries without complaint. "How about we all work on it together?" I suggested. After Aunt Livia's shift, Livia's eyes welled up, but she quickly turned back to the stuffing. Dad came in, brushing leaves from his jacket. "Found something while raking," he said, pulling out a tarnished tiara, Livia's old Halloween costume crown. "Remember this?" "The golden child's crown," I said without thinking. The kitchen went silent. Livia stared at the tiara, then slowly picked it up. "I was never golden," she said quietly. "Just really good at faking it, and really scared of being seen for who I really was." She handed the tiara to Sasha. "Here, sweetie, for your dress-up box." "But it's yours," Sasha said, confused. "Not anymore. I don't need crowns or designer clothes or other people's things to feel special." Livia smiled at me. "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself." "Deep thoughts from the coffee shop philosopher," Todd teased, but kindly. "Hey, you should see the tips I get when customers read my blog on their laptops," Livia laughed. "Turns out authenticity pays better than pretense." Mom wiped her hands on her apron. "Dinner's almost ready. Violet, will you help me set the table?" As we laid out plates and silverware, Mom touched my arm. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. The damage we did by playing favorites." "Mom?" "No, let me finish." Watching Livia now, really watching her, I see how our enabling hurt both of you. But seeing you two heal, watching you set boundaries while still leaving room for growth. She squeezed my hand. "You taught us all something about real love." The doorbell rang again. This time it was my old babysitter, coming to return a book she'd borrowed. Livia immediately went to apologize for taking her job that day, launching into a conversation about responsibility and growth. "She does that a lot now," Sasha observed, helping me fold napkins. "Says sorry to people." "Is that good or bad?" "Good, because she means it." Sasha arranged the napkins carefully. "And she doesn't try to be perfect anymore. She's just Aunt Livia." From the kitchen came laughter. Livia had apparently spilled stuffing on her coffee shop uniform. Instead of crying about designer clothes ruined, she was joking about adding stuffing barista to her resume. "Dinner's ready," Mom called. "Everyone wash up." As we gathered around the table, family, friends, and reformed sisters, I realized something. The story wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't even about justice. It was about growth, about the painful, beautiful process of becoming real. Livia caught my eye across the table and mouthed, "Thank you. Not for forgiveness or acceptance, but for something harder, the chance to earn back trust, one honest moment at a time." I nodded, passing her the stuffing she'd helped make. Sometimes the best endings aren't about perfect resolution, but about finding the courage to write a new story together. Even if that story starts with a security camera and a stolen emergency fund. Even if it takes losing a crown to find your true worth.
I'm Soraya. My brother thought it would be hilarious to push me onto a train going nowhere, just to see if I'd break. What started as a prank turned into something darker. My lease got canceled. My name was tied to fake debt. Old friends turned on me. And my own mother? She called in the middle of the night, not to help, but to guilt me into silence. They didn't just abandon me, they set me up to fall. But I didn't fall the way they hoped. I should have known better. I was sitting on the edge of my mattress, barely a bed, more like a cushion with a grudge, when the message lit up my phone. It was from Theron. "Let's start over," he wrote. Attached was a screenshot of a train ticket to Vegas. Round trip, paid for. "One weekend," the caption read. "No drama, just us." Reset? I stared at the screen for a long time. He hadn't texted me in nearly 7 months. Not after the last fight, not after I blocked him on everything. But Theron had a way of slipping through cracks I didn't even know I had. He was always like that, charming in a greasy way. If the devil ran a used car lot, he'd look like my brother. Still, the words reset and just us pulled at something old in me. Some dusty, battered hope I didn't even realize was still breathing. My stomach told me no. My heart? It just wanted a break. So I said yes. The station was packed when I got there. Dusk in Phoenix meant blinding orange skies, sagging heat, and the smell of dust and asphalt. I clutched my duffel bag like it was the last piece of me that made sense. Inside, 2 t-shirts, a change of jeans, travel-size deodorant, and that hopeful corner of me still stupid enough to believe this might be real. I waited. He was late. Of course he was. Theron didn't believe in time unless it benefited him. When he finally showed, he was all smiles and fake affection. "You clean up all right," he said, giving me that once-over look I hated. His arms were behind his back, like he had a magic trick lined up. "You're gonna love this ride," he said. "Feels like a movie or something." I didn't answer, just kept my eyes on the boarding sign. Vegas, 7:03 p.m., Gate B4. They called final boarding. He stepped in, pulled me into a hug, and just as I felt the shift in his weight, I knew. Too late. He pushed me, literally shoved me into the train as the doors hissed shut. I stumbled, landed on one knee, my duffel half flung. The train jolted forward, and I grabbed the metal bar for balance, breath caught in my throat. I spun around. He was outside, grinning like a damn fool. He waved. Then he turned and walked away. No signal, no Wi-Fi, just a phone blinking, no service, and a growing sense of dread curling in my gut. I pressed my face against the window. The platform disappeared behind us. I checked the digital map inside the train. We weren't going to Vegas. We were heading south, to Tucson. I blinked. Thought maybe I misread. I refreshed the ticket PDF on my phone. The departure time was correct. The destination wasn't. The ticket wasn't round trip. It wasn't even real. It was a one-way to nowhere. I tried texting Theron. Nothing. I called. Straight to voicemail. Then the screen lit up. "Let's see how far you get this time, sis." I felt it in my chest, like something cracked open. For a moment, all I could hear was the hum of the train and a high-pitched silence in my ears. This wasn't a mistake. It was a game. And I'd just been made the punchline again. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, tried not to cry. God, I hated him. But what really burned was that I hated myself more, for believing even for a second that he'd changed. I called Mom. No answer. Of course not. They were probably all sitting around the kitchen table laughing about it. Varek with his whiskey, Isolde pretending not to laugh too loud because she was trying to be neutral. That was her favorite line. Neutral while I drowned. A man in a plaid shirt, sitting across the aisle, leaned over. His eyes looked kind, but tired. He asked, "You okay? You look like you just lost your whole life." I gave him a crooked smile. Maybe I just did. He didn't say anything after that, just nodded slowly, like he knew that kind of loss himself, then turned back to his crossword. I stared out the window for the rest of the ride, watching the desert swallow the horizon. Tucson. When the train hissed to a stop, I stepped off like someone waking from a dream they hadn't asked to have. The platform was smaller, older, no flashy signs, just dust, peeling benches, and the dry heat clinging to my skin like a second betrayal. I walked into the station, found the nearest ticket kiosk, and tried to book the next train back to Phoenix. The screen blinked. Transaction declined. I tried again, with my debit card. Card flagged. Please contact your bank. My throat went dry. I called my landlord, hoping to buy a few hours, lie a little, say I was stuck, that I'd be back tonight. She didn't even let me finish. "Ms. Whitmore, we've already changed the locks." "What?" I felt my legs wobble. "We were informed you had behavioral issues, mental health concerns. It's a liability now." "Behavioral issues?" My voice cracked. "Who told you that?" She hung up. That apartment was barely a step above a shoebox, but it was mine. The first place I'd signed for on my own. I remembered scrubbing mildew off the ceiling with bleach and a towel and thinking, this is what independence smells like. Gone. Just like that. I didn't need to guess who had called her. Varek used to say stuff like that all the time. "Don't listen to her, she's always been unstable." He'd say it in front of neighbors, waitresses, even teachers. It was his favorite trick, make people question my mind, and they'd never listen to my words. And Theron? He just watched and laughed. Always the golden boy. "It's just a joke, chill," he'd whisper whenever things went too far. I sat on the curb outside the station and took inventory. $28, a dead phone, a bag full of cheap clothes, and no address to return to. I found a diner that never closed and bought the cheapest coffee they had. Burnt, watery, no refills. I stayed for hours pretending to scroll through a phone that wouldn't turn on. When I nodded off, a busboy tapped my shoulder. "You can't sleep here," he mumbled. I left. Spent the night on a bench behind the building. Woke up stiff, sore, and humiliated. The second night, same routine. On day 3, I walked into a temp agency. The woman behind the counter gave me a look like she already knew me. "Sorry, we're not hiring walk-ins," she said. I blinked. "Your sign says otherwise." She leaned in, lowered her voice. "Look, I saw the post. I don't know what you did back in Phoenix, but I don't want drama in my office." I left. On the street, a man brushed past me and muttered, "Trash always finds its way south." I almost chased after him, almost screamed, "What the hell do you even know about me?" But I didn't. What was the point? Later, I sat at a bus stop watching a family across the street, Dad lifting a toddler in the air, Mom laughing, the baby squealing with joy. I used to think I could build something like that. A life. A family. Stability. Then again, what did I know? I pulled out my phone again. Useless. Thought about calling Isolde. Maybe she'd listen. Maybe, for once, she'd pick me over him. Instead, I scrolled to her number and hit delete. She made her choice a long time ago. I remember being 9, kneeling on rice in the kitchen because Theron had blamed me for breaking the microwave. I hadn't even touched it. Isolde walked in, saw the tears in my eyes, and said, "Just apologize so this can end." Like peace was more important than truth. She'd been doing it my whole life, choosing the peace of silence over the pain of accountability, and I was done paying for that. As the sun dipped low, casting Tucson in bruised shades of orange and gray, I felt the weight of it all settle into my bones. My feet ached, my stomach growled, and I had nothing left to lose. I whispered it aloud just to hear the words outside my own head. You can sleep on a bench, you can walk back, but you're never calling them again. The words echoed like a vow in my head as I walked the quiet streets of Tucson at sunrise. My feet were blistered, my lips cracked, and I'd slept sitting upright on a metal bench with a plastic bag for a pillow. I wasn't sure what hurt worse, my back or my pride. 3 days in, I finally caught a break. A little cafe on the corner of 4th and Congress was hiring. It had a crooked open sign and a chalkboard menu out front with words like homemade and family-owned scribbled in curly white lettering. I walked in smelling like sweat and defeat. The owner, a woman named Denise, looked me over with that mixture of curiosity and caution people reserve for strays. She asked one question. You good with early mornings? I nodded so hard I made myself dizzy. They gave me a chance. Not much, 4 hours a day clearing tables and restocking creamer. But it was something. I overcompensated by saying yes ma'am too often and wiping the counters 3 times more than needed. I kept my sleeves down to hide the bruises on my arms from sleeping on concrete. I smiled too much. Polite, sweet, invisible. But invisibility doesn't last. A week in, things changed. Customers whispered as I passed. A group of college kids stared openly at me one morning, then burst into laughter when I dropped a glass. I tried to brush it off, but something was off. Mid-shift, my coworker Lily tugged me into the back and showed me her phone. A Facebook post. Local community group. My photo, cropped from a staff pic at the last diner I worked in Phoenix. Caption, warning, this girl stole tips from coworkers and walked out mid-shift. Now she's moved to Tucson. Heads up. Below it, hundreds of comments. She looks like the type. Karma's got a name. Anonymous source, of course. But I knew. The timing, the tone, the digital fingerprints. It was Theron. He always found a way to leave bruises without lifting a hand. I felt the floor shift under me. Lily's face was unreadable. She didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Later that day, Denise pulled me aside. Look, she said carefully, we've been getting calls. Some folks think you bring drama. I wanted to scream, to cry, to tell her that my brother was a sociopath who thought humiliation was a hobby. But all I could say was, it's not true. She nodded like she believed me. But when I clocked out, she avoided my eyes. The tips dried up. Customers stopped talking to me. One man, middle-aged khaki shorts, probably a dad, slipped a note onto the table I'd just cleaned. Trash doesn't belong here. I tore it up before Denise could see. That night, I stayed late wiping the same damn table until the wood blurred beneath the cloth. I thought maybe if I kept scrubbing, I could erase myself from the narrative. My thoughts spiraled. This isn't survival. This is a slow execution in front of an audience that already thinks you're guilty. Flashback hit me like a punch. 8th grade, when Theron blamed a kid for stealing his iPod. I knew the truth. I tried to speak up. The teacher waved me off. Don't be dramatic, Soraya. Theron winked at me as the kid cried in detention. Liars speak louder. I stayed late again the next day, hoping my effort could outshine the shadow he'd cast. But I could feel it in the way people looked through me. Then came the final gut punch. A TikTok clip. Someone had recorded me in the cafe, wiping tables in silence while customers stared. The caption, "She looks guilty AF." It had 500,000 views. A stranger from New Mexico commented, "She's a menace. I heard she scammed Yvette's family." Another said, "Hope she rots." I deleted all my social media accounts, burned them to digital ash. That night, I didn't cry from anger. I cried because no one would ever care enough to ask for the truth. Sitting in the dark, knees hugged to my chest, I whispered into the empty room. If I disappear, I wonder how long it would take anyone to notice. Turns out, not long at all. The next morning, I found an envelope shoved under the door at the cafe. It wasn't from the landlord or a customer or anyone with good intentions. It was stiff, official-looking, red stamp, urgent financial notice. My stomach twisted. Back at the shelter where I was crashing, an old converted church near downtown, I opened it with fingers that didn't want to move. My name was at the top of the page. Full legal. Social security number matched. Loan account ending in 4417. Amount $20,000. Reason, personal loan. Cosigner, left blank. My signature was at the bottom, except it wasn't mine. I stared at it so long my eyes blurred. Not because I didn't recognize it, but because I did. That swooping S, the curved W in Whitmore. Someone had studied me, practiced, planned, and there was only one person in my life with that much audacity and zero remorse. Theron. I sat down on the edge of the cot and tried to catch my breath. 20,000. I didn't even make that much in a year. I called the loan company, voice flat, pretending I'd just come across the paperwork and wanted to confirm a few details. The woman on the phone was polite enough, until she heard my last name. Oh yes, you're the primary. Your brother Theron was listed as the cosigner. He mentioned you might call. Mentioned I might call. I didn't even hang up. I just let the line go dead in my hand, like it could carry the weight of my rage. They never stop. It wasn't the money. It was the entitlement, the gall. The way they still thought I was some fallback plan, some stupid girl too scared to fight back. I could hear Varick's voice in my head, clear as day. That one. She's got a loud mouth, but a quiet bite. I went to the legal aid office near campus that afternoon. Fluorescent lighting, peeling posters about tenant rights. The woman behind the glass didn't even glance up when I walked in. Proving fraud in a family case is hard, she muttered. Especially if they've used your info before. You sure you want to open that door? Number. But it was already open. She handed me a form and told me not to expect miracles. I left, form in hand, heart pounding, hands shaking. Flashback slammed into me. A backyard cookout years ago. I was maybe 23. Theron spilled a drink on the grill, nearly set the deck on fire. Varick laughed, slapped his back, then looked at me and said, Bet your sister'll clean this up too. She always does. And I had. Every time. Back in the shelter, I grabbed my notebook, started writing, not feelings, facts, dates, text, fake job references, sketchy charges on my old credit card. I pulled out screenshots from cloud backups, saved voicemails, every receipt I hadn't already burned. I created a spreadsheet with color-coded tabs like I was building a case file. Because I was. This wasn't just a bad family dynamic anymore. It was a blueprint for destruction. I whispered it to myself as I typed, If I can't escape them, I'll expose them. Later that night, I called Theron's burner. He didn't pick up. He never does when he knows he's guilty. So I left a message. You forged my name. That's a felony. You want war? You got it. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I sounded like someone already planning the funeral of what used to be called family. Afterward, I walked 3 miles to my old storage unit, the one I hadn't touched since Phoenix, and changed the locks. Opened a new bank account, froze my credit. Deleted every shared connection on Venmo, LinkedIn, even my email contacts. Then I opened my journal and wrote one line across the top of the page. They won't just lose access. They'll lose me completely. I remember writing it like a promise, not a threat, not even a declaration, just a truth that had taken years to crawl into my bones. So when my phone lit up at 12:41 a.m., with a blocked number, I should have let it ring, should have tossed it across the room and rolled over. But I didn't. I answered. And there she was. Sweetheart, Isolde's voice cracked. I know what Theron did, but don't make this worse, please. Her words came slow, trembled around the edges. She sounded older than I remembered, softer. Like the mother who used to rub aloe on my sunburns, who whispered lullabies when I had night terrors, who told me, You're safe, you're safe, you're safe. But she hadn't said that in years. Now her voice was doing a different dance. Not soothing, strategic. I could hear the shaking, but I couldn't tell if it was sorrow or performance. She inhaled sharply. I don't sleep, Soraya. I worry every night. Your brother, he's not like you. He's fragile. You've always been the strong one. There it was. That old story. That poisoned compliment. She cried then. I heard it. The hitch in her breath. The wet swallow. And for a second, I believed it. But then came the twist. If you go through with this, he'll break. Is that what you want? To see him shattered? You know he's not built like you. My chest burned. That was the script. That was always the script. I was the strong one. The one who held it in. The one who got good grades, stayed quiet, patched holes, while Theron set fires and got sympathy. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I was 12 again. It was summer. A window had shattered in the neighbor's garage. Theron and I stood side by side in the kitchen. Varek's face was red. His belt was in his hand. Who did it? He barked. I opened my mouth. Theron looked at me, wide-eyed, pathetic, and shook his head like he was 5, not 10. I stepped forward. I did. Later, as I knelt on the bathroom floor, wincing with every breath, Isolde dabbed ointment on my shoulder and whispered, You're so strong, baby. That's why I knew you'd take it. She kissed my forehead. And that was it. Strength in our family meant endurance. It meant being the shield while the sword kept swinging. Back in my tiny apartment, I walked into the bathroom and stared at myself under the yellow light. Jaw clenched, eyes swollen from sleepless nights. I didn't recognize the woman in the mirror, but I respected her. She was done. I grabbed my phone and opened a new message. To a therapist whose number I'd saved but never used. Hi, I need help sorting out years of damage. When's your next available session? I hit send. Then I pulled out my journal and started writing. Not about what had happened, but how it had shaped me. I wrote it like evidence, because maybe one day it would be. And somewhere on page 3, I scribbled in all caps. If being strong means breaking for them, I choose weakness. Then I opened my email and typed out one last message to Isolde. Subject line, no more. Body. You can love me without asking me to break for him. If you can't, then maybe you don't know what love is. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. The apartment fell into a silence so complete I could hear the hum of the fridge and the tick of the cheap wall clock. But it didn't feel empty. It felt real, like air after a storm, like truth even when it hurt. The silence feels honest, and that's something. But honesty doesn't last long when you're up against people who thrive on distortion. I woke up to my phone buzzing like it was on fire. Dozens of notifications, ping after ping, DMs, mentions, tagged photos. My stomach twisted before I even unlocked the screen. There it was. A photo of me and Theron, cropped tight, heavily filtered, edited just enough to look like something it wasn't. It was from years ago. A family barbecue, I think. He had his arm around me, but someone had softened the focus, shifted the context, and slapped on a caption designed to destroy. Some families are closer than they should be. My breath caught in my throat. I scrolled through the comments. Gross. She always looked shady. Knew something was off about her. I stared at the screen, disbelief burning into rage. This wasn't just character assassination. This was a slow public hanging, and they were handing out rope like party favors. And then I saw her name. Demi, an old co-worker from Phoenix, the one who'd once bought me groceries when my debit card declined. She had shared the post, added her own caption. I hate to share this, but people need to know the truth. I called her. Straight to voicemail. I texted, Demi, please tell me this isn't real. Nothing. The air felt thick. I could barely breathe. I knew what this was. She'd been paid off. Or scared off. Either way, she wasn't standing by me. That afternoon, I showed up to work at the cafe like everything was normal, but it wasn't. People stared. A couple got up and left the moment I brought them menus. Denise, my manager, pulled me into the back. "I don't want to believe any of it," she said gently. "But the posts are getting attention. If this keeps going, corporate might step in. I need to protect the cafe." I nodded. I understood. But it still stung. That night, I didn't cry. I printed. Every screenshot, every lie, every time-stamped message. I dug into my cloud backups, my photo archives, even old voicemail transcriptions. I created a file, labeled it Contingency Plan. I sealed it in an envelope and handed it to Denise before I left. "If anything happens to me," I said quietly, "open this." She didn't ask what was inside. She just nodded, eyes full of something like pity. On the walk home, I stopped at a corner store and used the public Wi-Fi to create a new Instagram account. No name, no bio, just a blank slate and one post, a photo of my journal. Caption: "You think silence means guilt. I've been silent because I was surviving. But you want noise? I've got plenty." I didn't name names, but I didn't have to. I listed dates, blurred receipts, vague references to loans and forged signatures. Enough to make people pause. Enough to plant doubt. The post caught fire. DMs rolled in, some hateful, but some curious. "Wait, is this about that girl from the cafe? Didn't her brother have a record? Things aren't adding up." And just like that, the ground shifted. Then came the message. Theron. His handle was private, but I recognized the profile photo. A blurry shot of his dog from 5 years ago. His message: "Take that post down. You don't want this smoke." I stared at the words, heartbeat steady, controlled, focused. I typed back, "You should have left me off that train." Then, one last line, fingers shaking, but not from fear. "You want war? Here's your first warning shot." I hit send and dropped the phone on the counter like it burned. The next morning came like any other. Eggs crackling on the flat top, the smell of burnt toast, Jalen humming something off-key by the grill. The diner was packed. Tickets fluttered on the rail like white flags, and my hands moved on autopilot, pour, plate, wipe, smile. Until the air changed. It wasn't loud. It wasn't a crash or scream. It was the kind of silence that feels intentional, that unnatural stillness when people stop chewing just to listen. I looked up, and there they were. Theron, in a pressed black shirt, like he'd come straight from a funeral. Varek, arms folded, jaw locked. And Isolde, pearl earrings, handkerchief in hand, face tilted like she was already the victim. I froze. They didn't walk in. They marched, slow and calculated, like it was a stage, and they were here to deliver a performance. Theron stepped up to the counter and slapped down a folder. "This," he said loudly, "is what betrayal looks like." Varek opened the folder and slid it across. A thick, notarized contract. A $50,000 debt. My name at the top. "She owes this," he said, voice like gravel. "And she thinks she can just run away." I didn't move. Customers turned their heads. Some held phones just low enough to record. Others whispered. Theron kept going. "She's the reason this family's falling apart. We've protected her for years, and this is how she repays us." Isolde dabbed at her eyes like a stage actress trying to win an award. "We're not angry," she said, voice quivering. "We just want closure." I saw a woman in the corner booth mouth the words, "What is going on?" to her husband. I looked at the contract, untouched. Then I looked at them. And I laughed. Not loud. Just a small, tired sound that rose in my throat before I could stop it. I picked up the folder and turned it around. Back to them. "I'm not signing anything," I said. I stepped out from behind the counter, wiped my hands on my apron, and scanned the room. "I know what this looks like, and I know some of you already have opinions." I paused. "But closure doesn't look like a debt. It looks like accountability." I walked toward Jalen and stood beside him, shoulder to shoulder. "Closure means you stop showing up at someone's job to humiliate them. Closure means you stop stealing and calling it family. Closure means you leave people alone when they finally leave you. Varek's jaw twitched. Theron hissed, "This isn't over." I just looked at him. "It is for me." They left with the same theatrical slowness, but this time no one clapped. No one stood. The diner stayed quiet until the bell on the door stopped ringing. Jalen didn't say a word. He just handed me a mug of coffee and bumped my shoulder with his. That night, I found a note taped to his windshield. "She's toxic. If you're with her, you'll fall too." Typed. No signature. He showed it to me in silence. My stomach sank. He looked at me, lips pressed into a line. "You think I scare that easy?" I didn't trust my voice, so I just nodded. We burned the note in the kitchen sink. I didn't sleep. Instead, I wrote a long post on my burner account. "I will not pay for silence. I will not apologize for surviving, and I will not let shame be my inheritance." I hit publish. Then I turned off my phone. They came into my job to end me. Instead, they just told everyone who they really are. 3 days later, I opened my mailbox to find a thick white envelope, hand-delivered. No return address, no stamp. Just my full name printed in sharp black ink like a slap across the face. Inside, a summons. They were suing me. Defamation. 46 pages. Screenshots of my posts. Paragraphs pulled from my burner account. Even a blurry image of my journal from the photo I'd posted. They'd printed it all and handed it to a judge like it was gospel. The envelope trembled in my hand, but I didn't. Instead, I made a call. The legal aid office didn't remember me at first. But when I mentioned my name again, the receptionist's voice shifted, like she was bracing for something bigger than paperwork. An hour later, I was sitting across from a lawyer named Rita. She had short gray hair, square glasses, and eyes that didn't blink often. "They want you scared enough to back down," she said, flipping through the documents. "They want you quiet." I leaned forward, pulled out my own folder. "I brought something too." Her eyebrows raised. I slid it across the table. Loan documents, forged leases, text message threats, screenshots of everything from the fake Facebook posts to the wire transfer receipts I'd traced back to Theron. She turned one page, then another, then another. Finally, she sat back in her chair and exhaled slowly. "This won't just be a defense," she said. "This'll be a counterattack." By the end of the day, we'd filed our own suit. Identity theft, emotional distress, and harassment. 2 days later, I noticed the gray sedan. It was parked across from the diner when I opened, still there when I locked up. No plates visible from the front. No movement. The first time, I thought it might be coincidence. The second time, I knew better. That week, I started hearing footsteps when I walked home. Always at a distance, never close, never fast. Just enough to raise goosebumps. I reported it to the police. They said, "Unless there's contact, there's nothing we can do." So I bought pepper spray. And a whistle. And told Jalen everything. He didn't try to talk me out of anything. He just nodded. I checked my voicemail that night. 6 missed calls, all blocked. One message made it through. Distorted voice. Male. Low and glitchy, like it was run through a filter. "If you keep pushing this, your past's gonna look like the pretty version." I stared at the phone in my hand like it had teeth. I saved the message, emailed it to Rita, and then deleted it from my phone. I didn't want to hear it again. I whispered, "You're not scaring me. You're confirming everything." The next morning, I stood outside the Phoenix courthouse under a sky that couldn't decide whether it wanted to rain or burn. But the rain won. Rare in this city, cleansing. Jalen held the umbrella between us, his hand steady above my head. He looked down at me, eyes searching mine. "You ready to walk in?" I nodded. "Oh, I've been walking into storms my whole life. Let's go." The courtroom didn't smell like justice. It smelled like old paper and disinfectant, like nerves hiding behind cheap perfume and worn-out suits. But it was quiet. The kind of quiet that means everything is being recorded, and nothing can be taken back. When the verdict came, I didn't cry. Identity fraud confirmed. Harassment substantiated. My counterclaim settled privately. The defamation suit dropped. Varek never showed. Isolde didn't send a single email. Theron sat through one day, jaw clenched like he was trying to chew through shame, then never came back. They just disappeared. No apology, no confrontation, just absence. And for the first time, I didn't chase answers. Weeks passed. The tension I'd carried for years, that coiled wire of always bracing, always flinching, it began to loosen, not vanish, but soften, like muscle finally unclenching. Then one day, while I was clearing dishes at the diner, Delza slid an envelope across the counter. She didn't say anything, just nodded at it and went back to the coffee machine. Inside was a lease agreement, the corner cafe space next door. Empty for months. Too much work, too much rent. Until now. Her handwriting at the bottom. You've outgrown surviving. It's time you started living. I sat with that sentence all night, hands flat on the paper, like it might vanish if I blinked too long. 2 months later, it was mine. The place smelled like drywall and dust at first, like abandonment. But we scrubbed it down, painted over the sadness, hung thrifted light fixtures, and strung up desert succulents. I printed a menu myself on cardstock that curled slightly in the Arizona heat. Brunch was simple: avocado toast, chorizo hash, iced lavender tea. But people came, not out of pity, not out of curiosity. They came because the food was real, because I was. Sometimes I'd catch a customer wiping their mouth and looking around like they weren't just eating. They were breathing easier. That meant something. The sign above the door? Soraya's. Just that. Late one night after closing, I opened my laptop. Just once. Theron's account. Inactive. Isolde's? Still there. Photos of Thanksgiving tablescapes, perfectly frosted birthday cakes, captions like, "Cherish your children, they're your legacy," but never a single photo of me, not one. I closed the tab, didn't sigh, didn't ache, just moved on. If erasing me helps them sleep, fine. I'm not living to be remembered by people who never saw me to begin with. I locked the cafe and found Jalen on the back steps, his apron slung over his shoulder, shirt damp from dishwater and heat. He handed me a glass bottle of Mexican cola, sat beside me. The desert sky blinked with airplane lights and stars trying to outshine them. After a while, he asked quietly, "Would you ever talk to them again?" I didn't answer right away. I looked out at the empty street. "I think forgiveness isn't required for freedom," I said finally, "and I'm finally free." He nodded, resting his head against the wall beside mine. We sat in the hush of a life that was finally our own. I tilted my face up to the sky, breathing in the dusty air, the sound of traffic 2 streets away, the buzz of a neon sign across the block. "They tried to burn me down," I whispered, "but I used the fire to build something better." Before we wrap this story, I want to leave you with something real. Maybe you've never been pushed onto a literal train and left to figure it out alone. But maybe, just maybe, you know what it feels like to be pushed emotionally, abandoned, betrayed, expected to keep carrying everyone else's weight while they walk away clean. That was my story. And what I've learned is this: family isn't who shares your last name. It's who shows up, who respects your boundaries, who roots for your healing even when it's inconvenient. Survival isn't the end game. Peace is. Ownership of your life is. Your freedom is. Forgiveness is optional. Growth is not. So let me ask you something. Have you ever had to cut ties with someone you once believed you couldn't live without? Did you rebuild from ashes, or are you still sitting in the smoke, wondering when it's okay to finally breathe? I'd love to hear from you. Seriously, if this story spoke to something deep in you, type 1 in the comments, or just let me know where you're watching from. If it rubbed you the wrong way, that's okay too. Tell me why. Every voice counts here. And hey, if this hit you in the heart and you want more stories that speak the truth most people are scared to say out loud, don't forget to subscribe. That little button? It's how we keep going. It's how we keep telling stories that matter. Until next time, own your story. Don't wait for permission. I'm Beatrix. When I was 6, my father drove me to a gas station in the middle of nowhere and just left. No goodbye, no turning back. I waited all night, thinking it was my fault. Turns out, that was only the beginning. My family didn't just abandon me, they erased me. From their home, from their memories, even from the family will. They said I was unstable, that I didn't belong. But what if the truth was never about me, but about what they were trying to hide? What kind of mother pays to make her child disappear? And why? After all these years, are they still afraid of my name? People talk about the moment their life changed like it's some big, dramatic event. A car crash, a diagnosis, a wedding gone wrong. But mine? Mine was quiet. I was 6 years old when my father pulled off the road and left me at a gas station in the middle of nowhere. No fireworks, no yelling, just the sound of tires on gravel and a door that never opened again. I still remember the smell in that car, old leather, stale coffee, and something else I couldn't place back then. Something like finality. He didn't say much during that drive, just hummed along to some dusty country song on the radio and nodded when I pointed out shapes in the clouds. I thought he was tired. Or maybe he had something on his mind. What 6-year-old thinks, this is the last time I'll see my dad? When we pulled into Elmridge, I didn't even know the town's name. It was winter. The sky looked bruised, like it was holding back snow, and the gas station he chose felt ancient, like it had been forgotten by time. He parked near the edge, engine still running, and turned to me with a half-smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey, sweetheart, I need you to do me a favor, all right?" I nodded, eager to please, always eager to please. "Go inside and grab us 2 hot chocolates. I'll be right here." I'll be right here. I held on to those 4 words like a blanket. It didn't even occur to me not to trust him. I slipped out of the car, sneakers crunching over frozen dirt, and pushed open the glass door that jingled like an old wind chime. The man behind the counter looked like he'd been carved from stone. Barely glanced at me when I asked for the drinks. I remember the cup was too hot in my hands, and I kept switching back and forth as I waited for Dad to come through the door. 10 minutes passed, then 30, then an hour. At some point, the guy behind the counter asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes. After all, Dad said he'd be right back. I just had to be patient. 2 hours later, I stepped outside and saw only an empty spot where the car had been. No tire marks, no note, just silence and that sinking, cold realization that something was horribly wrong. A police cruiser showed up around dusk. I don't even remember who called them. Maybe the gas station guy finally decided I wasn't just some lost kid waiting for a parent in a long line. The officers tried calling my mother. I watched them whisper to each other, their eyes flicking toward me, like I was some problem they didn't want to deal with. She said, "She doesn't want custody." One of them finally told the other, not knowing I could hear. Not custody. Not me. They used words like abandoned and orphaned, words I had only ever heard in Disney movies. And just like that, my life went from a regular Tuesday to a case number. The next morning, Ruthin came. She was my dad's older sister. I'd only met her twice before, and both times she'd worn too much perfume and looked like she was trying hard not to stay long. This time, she looked like someone had smacked her across the face with bad news. "I didn't even know she was in town," she mumbled to the officer. Then her eyes met mine. She hesitated, then crouched down. "Hi, Beatrix. I guess it's you and me now." It was only years later, after the damage had already soaked into my bones, that I learned about the envelope. A week before that road trip, Dad had received something in the mail. A manila envelope he refused to open in front of Mom. Ruthin found it stuffed in a drawer months later, unopened but clearly tampered with. Inside, a DNA test. You know how people say family isn't about blood? They usually mean it in a good way. But in my case, it was a curse. That test was the excuse he needed. Maybe he'd always suspected I wasn't his. Maybe the timing didn't add up. Maybe Mom had told him something that broke him inside. Whatever the reason, he didn't confront. He didn't ask. He just drove. As a kid, I thought I must have done something, gotten a grade wrong, forgotten to brush my teeth, spilled juice on the carpet one too many times. I spent years trying to earn back a place I didn't even know I'd lost. But what hurt more than being left behind was learning I was never supposed to exist at all. I used to think that being left behind was the worst thing a parent could do to their child. But being forgotten, erased, cuts deeper. It doesn't leave bruises. It leaves blank spaces where love should have been. Ruthin didn't have much. Her bookstore smelled like paper, dust, and cinnamon gum. It was the only thing she inherited from her late husband, and most of the time, she seemed more overwhelmed than nurturing. Still, she cleared out the cramped storage room in the back and told me I could stay there as long as I needed. As long as I needed. The same way you tell someone you'll call them later, knowing you won't. She bought me a tiny pink lamp from a garage sale and placed it beside the mattress she'd laid out on crates. That lamp glowed like hope, but I kept my suitcase zipped for weeks. A part of me didn't believe this was permanent. Another part prayed it wasn't. School started a month later. Ruthin walked me there on my first day, holding my hand like she was trying to convince herself she had this under control. I could feel her palm sweating against mine. At school, I didn't speak much. Kids asked where my parents were. I told them I lived in a bookstore. Some looked at me like I was lying. Others asked if I'd been in jail. One boy whispered, "She's the one they left at the gas station." And that rumor stuck harder than glue. Even teachers treated me differently. One of them called me sweetheart in that voice adults use when they think you're broken. Another kept pulling me aside, saying things like, "Are you okay, Beatrix? You know you can talk to us." But I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to disappear, or at least become someone no one noticed. Then, one rainy afternoon, Ruthin called me into the front of the store. Her eyes were darting like she was reading through something she didn't want me to see. She handed me a manila envelope. "This is from your mother's lawyer," she said, voice tight. Inside were the court documents. Celeste Fenn, my mother, in the legal sense, had signed away all parental rights. My name wasn't just crossed out, it was missing. Entire lines had been rewritten, like I'd never been there to begin with. "I didn't want you to see that," Ruthin muttered, trying to take it back. But I held it tighter. It didn't feel like losing something. It felt like being erased with intention. Later that night, I overheard Ruthin on the phone, whispering behind the stacks of hardcovers. They told me not to talk about her, said it's better for everyone if she just fades out. Like she was a phase. A phase. That word hit harder than any slap. Years later, when I was old enough to open bank mail without asking, I found a strange statement in Ruthin's drawer. A quiet transfer had been made from Fenn and Maddox, LLP, to her account. A large amount. Dated around the time I moved in. When I asked her about it, her face dropped. "I didn't take it for me," she said quickly. "Your mother offered, no, demanded, that I take it if I was going to keep you. It wasn't hush money, I swear. I couldn't afford to feed you, Beatrix." The worst part? I believed her, and still, it stung. What was I? A responsibility someone got paid to carry? A monthly expense? Was I a child or just a transaction? I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I went to the back room, opened the drawer of the little pink lamp, and took out my notebook. I flipped past the pages of doodles and copied homework until I reached a blank page. With a dull pencil, I wrote one sentence and underlined it 3 times. Beatrix Fenn. No matter what they say. That night, I whispered it over and over, like a prayer to whatever God might still be listening. Because if they were going to spend their lives pretending I didn't exist, then I would spend mine proving I did. I didn't know it then, but I wasn't the only one being broken from the inside. I hadn't heard from Kian in over a decade, not since the day I watched his face from across a courtroom lobby as he held our mother's hand and turned his back to me. We didn't speak that day. We didn't even look each other in the eye. And I told myself it was better that way. So when his message appeared on my phone one night, "Do you ever think about them?" My breath caught like I'd stepped off a ledge. Them. My fingers hovered above the screen. Half of me wanted to delete it. The other half wanted to say yes. Every damn day. Instead, I stared at the blinking cursor. I thought of the journal under my bed, with my name written over and over like a lifeline. I thought of how many nights I'd wondered if Kian ever asked about me. If he remembered we were made from the same house, even if I was the one they burned down. Eventually, I replied, "Sometimes. Why?" He didn't answer right away. Kian had always been the favorite. The golden boy. The one who made honor roll, smiled on cue, and never left a single sock on the floor. Celeste used to introduce him at dinner parties, like a trophy she could take credit for. And yet, behind that perfect fen facade, something had started to shift. What I didn't know then, but he would later tell me, was that it began with a locked drawer in our father's office. Kian had been looking for a phone charger, of all things, a stupid little wire, but the drawer wouldn't budge. Curiosity got the better of him. He found the key taped under the desk, exactly where Magnus used to hide Christmas presents. Inside, instead of electronics or old tax forms, he found a thin file stamped confidential in red. He told me he almost didn't open it, that he stared at my name typed in bold letters across the top and felt his stomach twist. The report inside was clinical, emotionless. Terms like emotionally volatile, resistant to authority, and attachment issues were used like bullets on a page. I was 5 years old when that file was written. Why did they keep this? He asked me later. Why would they save something like that unless it meant something to them? I didn't have the heart to tell him I already knew. That file was their justification, their proof that I wasn't fit to be loved. And now, it was breaking him too. He started playing piano again. Secretly, quietly, only late at night, when the house was asleep. Not the classical crap our mother forced him into, but raw, dissonant chords. His own sound. He told me the music was the only thing that didn't feel like a lie. Then, one night, my phone lit up again. It was a voice note. I tapped play, and his voice came through, shaky but steady. "I think I understand now. And I'm sorry. I should have asked questions. I should have found you sooner. I didn't know how to be anything other than what they made me. But I think I'm ready now. If you are?" I sat on the floor of my office at the counseling center, knees pulled to my chest, replaying the message 5 times. 10. I closed my eyes and heard us as kids, chasing each other down the hallway. Before the silence. Before the divide. I typed one word and hit send. Coffee? I didn't know what I expected. Maybe he'd say no. Maybe this was a glitch in our timeline, and it would collapse again the second I hoped. But he replied almost instantly. "Name the place." So I did. A quiet little diner near the edge of Elmridge, the kind with cracked booths and burnt coffee, where the past didn't matter and no one asked questions. The next morning, we sat across from each other for the first time in 22 years. He looked older, of course, but tired in a way that didn't belong to youth. "You ever wonder if they just made us up?" he asked, stirring his coffee with a chipped spoon. I laughed, but it wasn't funny. "All the time," I said. "We didn't talk about the report, not that day. We didn't need to. It was there between us, thick as fog. What mattered wasn't the file. It was the fracture it left in him. The mirror he'd been forced to hold up and realize. Perfection had a cost, and neither of us was prepared for what we'd uncover next." Kian and I sat in the booth long after the coffee had gone cold. The silence between us was no longer sharp. It was heavy, but bearable. He fidgeted with a sugar packet while I traced circles on the rim of my mug. "I don't know who I am without them," he said quietly. I let that sit for a second before replying, "Maybe that's the best part." He gave a sad smile, but didn't argue. I wanted to ask him about the file, if he believed it, if it changed how he saw me. But I didn't. Not yet. That day wasn't about dragging ghosts out into daylight. It was about recognizing that we both had them. After we said goodbye, I walked back to the bookstore with a strange ache in my chest. Not pain, not quite. More like the shifting weight of something long buried starting to stir. Ruthin was in the attic, digging through boxes for a community donation drive. I offered to help, partly out of guilt, partly out of restlessness. Most of it was junk. Old Christmas lights, paperback romances with yellowed pages, a broken lamp that had survived 3 moves. Then I spotted a metal folder shoved between 2 crates of outdated tax files. It was labeled in faded black marker, Fen, private. I knew better than to ignore something like that. Inside were papers, neatly clipped. Most were bland, property records, old bills. But near the bottom was a thick envelope, sealed with a wax stamp. My hands shook as I opened it. It was a copy of my grandfather's will. Not the version I'd seen referenced in the news or court summaries years ago. This one named 2 heirs, Beatrix Fenn. Me. I sat down hard on the attic floor, breath catching in my throat. Ruthin peeked over the edge of a box. "What is it?" I handed her the paper. Her eyes widened. God! I forgot this even existed." "You forgot?" My voice cracked. "Years ago," she said, almost in a whisper. "Celeste came by, said she was cleaning out some of the family records, asked if I had anything left over from your grandfather. I didn't remember this file. I thought it was just tax junk." "Why didn't you check?" My voice rose. "I didn't think she'd lie to me," Ruthin said, her face pale. "I didn't think." But she had. Of course she had. Celeste never asked questions without motive, and she'd clearly intended to erase any trace of me, legally, financially, historically. That night, I couldn't sleep. I laid awake replaying every moment I'd spent believing I was invisible, unwanted, a fluke. But this? This proved I wasn't just forgotten. I was eliminated. I pulled out the will again and reread the line with my name. It was right there. Black ink on aged paper. They didn't just throw me away. I whispered to no one. They buried me. The shame I'd carried for years, wondering what was wrong with me, why I couldn't be loved, morphed into something else. Not rage, not yet, but power. I wasn't broken. I was buried. There's a difference. The next morning, I called an old friend who'd gone into estate law. I didn't give her details, just asked a simple question. Hypothetically, what happens if someone illegally suppresses a legal heir? She paused, then said, "Depends." "But it's serious, like felony serious." I thanked her and hung up. My hands were steady as I filed the will into a locked drawer in my desk at the counseling center. Then I stood in the doorway, staring into the warm, quiet space I'd built for other people to heal. "They tried to erase me," I said aloud, to the books, the carpet, the silence. "Now let's see who they really are when the masks fall off." I didn't need revenge. I needed the truth to breathe. The folder hadn't left my desk since the night I found it. Sometimes I'd open it just to see my name on that page again, like I was making sure it was still real, still mine. But staring at truth and using it were 2 very different things. So I met with Serena, a former classmate turned estate lawyer. We sat across from each other in a booth at the only decent cafe in Elmridge, her laptop glowing between us and a stack of legal pads cluttering the table. She flipped through the scanned copy of the will, her brow furrowed. "It's valid," she said finally. "Your grandfather never signed a revocation or amendment. Unless they can produce one, this document holds weight." "And if they buried it on purpose?" "That's fraud, Beatrix. It's serious. But the second you act on this, publicly or legally, you're opening a door that won't close again. Are you sure? I didn't answer. Not yet. Back at my office, I sat down with pen and paper, not a keyboard. I wanted the weight of every word I wrote to be felt. By me, by her. I wasn't angry, not in that moment. Just done being quiet. The letter was calm, measured. No threats, no accusations, just truth laid out like a chessboard. Celeste, I have come across a version of the will that names me as co-heir. It was not revoked. I understand what this means. I have no interest in a war. But if forced, I will defend my right to exist. I ask for discretion and resolution. Silence will not protect you anymore. Beatrix. I sent it through Serena's office using a bonded courier. Within 24 hours, I got a call from Ruthin. You sent it? She asked. Yes. She exhaled hard into the phone. You're brave. But listen. Celeste doesn't respond to polite. She responds to threat. That's not who I am, I told her. But it's who she is. 3 days passed. Nothing. On the 4th morning, I found Keon waiting on the front steps of my center, hoodie pulled up, duffel bag beside him. He looked like he hadn't slept. I'm leaving, he said. I blinked. What happened? She found out I helped you, said I was jeopardizing the family name. He laughed bitterly. Dad just sat there, polishing his glasses like we were talking about the weather. You don't have to do this, I said quietly. Yes, I do, he replied. They don't own me either. I wanted to say I was proud of him. I wanted to hug him. But all I could manage was to take his bag and bring him inside. That night, while he slept in the spare room, I checked my email. One new message. No sender name, no subject. Just a single sentence in the body. They're prepping a media campaign. You'll be the bitter illegitimate. Be ready. I didn't know who sent it. I didn't care. I stood up, walked out into the chill of the Elmridge night, and stared up at the moon. They think dragging me into the spotlight will break me, I whispered. Then I smiled. Tight, small, but real. They don't know what I've had to survive just to stand here. And just like that, they turned me into a headline. I woke up to my face staring back at me from a news alert. There it was, cropped from a photo I hadn't even known was taken. Me standing in front of the counseling center, arms crossed, tired eyes, hair pulled back on a windy day. Underneath it, the headline in bold, Estranged Daughter and Disoriented Son, the Fenn Family's Quiet Struggle. I clicked before I could even breathe. The article was glossy, clinical, designed to look balanced, but bleeding manipulation between every line. It painted me as a troubled, bitter outsider, estranged for years due to emotional volatility and unresolved personal issues. It described Kean as recently experiencing a mental health crisis and under close psychiatric review, citing an unnamed family source. There was no source. There was just Celeste. I dropped my phone. It clattered to the floor, screen still lit. Beatrix! Kean's voice echoed through the house. He stormed in from the guest room, his face pale and jaw clenched. He held his phone up like it was burning him. They said I'm in a facility. They're telling people I'm unstable, that I relapsed. You were never diagnosed with anything, I said, standing up. They don't care, he spat. She's telling people I broke down, that you triggered it, that I'm confused, too fragile to be taken seriously. She said I needed professional intervention. His hands shook. I haven't cried in 10 years, B. I think I'm about to now. I put my hand on his shoulder. You won't cry, not now, not over them. You're going to fight. He looked at me like he didn't know how. I'll help you, I promised, but we can't hide anymore. I reached out to a journalist named Emery Langston, someone I'd met through a client, someone who didn't work for clicks, but for clarity. Emery agreed to meet in person, no cameras, no tricks, just my voice, my truth. I sat across from her in the back of the bookstore. Kean stayed nearby, out of frame, but within reach. Emery placed a recorder between us and said, "Speak when you're ready." So I did. I told her about the attic, the will, the letter, the silence. I told her how Celeste tried to scrub me from existence, like a redacted footnote in her perfect narrative. I spoke about shame, about growing up in the absence of answers, about how they taught Kian to see me as a shadow. I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't insult them. But I told the truth. The story ran within 48 hours. Online first, then syndicated. It hit a nerve. Comments poured in from strangers who recognized their own families in mine. Survivors of silence. Children of image-obsessed households. Adults who had once been erased. "You're not crazy," one anonymous message read. "We saw what they did. We all did. We just didn't say anything." Old family staff, a former nanny, even a former colleague of Magnus's who admitted he never looked anyone in the eye when your name came up. For once, I wasn't alone. The next morning, I posted the original will on my center's website. No fanfare, no hashtags, just a clean PDF and one line typed in bold above it. You can't erase what was written in truth. It wasn't about inheritance. It never had been. It was about reclaiming the name they tried to bury, about giving people like me permission to stop apologizing for being born unwanted. But Celeste never played fair, and her next move was the dirtiest yet. The envelope was thick, stamped with gold lettering, and hand-delivered by a man who didn't bother hiding his discomfort. I didn't even have to open it to know. Celeste had finally shown her teeth. Inside, a formal summons. Celeste Fenn versus Beatrix Fenn, charges. Defamation. Breach of privacy. Fraudulent claim to inheritance. Attached was a demand for immediate removal of my name from all references to the will. They alleged I'd forged the document, manipulated public perception, and caused irreparable harm to the Fenn family's legacy. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was textbook Celeste. She couldn't destroy the truth, so she'd try to bury it under legal jargon and PR tactics. She wasn't trying to win in court. She was trying to exhaust me, drown me in paperwork and headlines until I backed down. But she had no idea how far I'd already crawled just to stand this tall. That night, as I sat in the glow of my desk lamp, another memory surfaced, one I hadn't touched in years. I was 6, hiding behind the tall staircase at the Missoula house, my knees pressed to the floor, holding my breath, trying to be invisible. I heard my father say, "We can't carry this forever, Celeste. It'll ruin everything." And her reply, calm and cold, "Then we cut the rot before it spreads." Back then, I didn't understand. Now, I did. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was damage control. And here they were, doing it all over again. The next morning, Kian knocked on my door. He looked tired, but clear-eyed. He held up a folder. "I filed an affidavit," he said. My throat tightened. "You did what?" "I wrote down everything. How they handled you, how they used me, how Mom made me believe you were dangerous." I called her what she is, a woman more invested in image than truth. He set the file on the counter and stepped back. If they're going to lie under oath, I won't stand next to them. When we walked into the Missoula courthouse that Friday morning, the air was thick with cameras and whispers. Sketch artists, reporters. Half of them didn't know who I was last month. Now I was the daughter who won't stay quiet. Celeste arrived in a pristine cream suit, hair perfect, expression blank. She didn't look at me. Good. I sat at the petitioner's table. My hands didn't shake. When it was my turn, I stood. The room was dead quiet. "I'm not here to reclaim money," I said, my voice steady. "I'm not even here to punish. I'm here because when I was 6, I was thrown away. Now I'm being told I was never meant to belong in the first place. If being erased was their goal, then I'm standing here to prove I survived it." I sat back down. I didn't need applause. I needed the silence that followed. The next day, the internet exploded. Courtroom sketches of me facing down Celeste circulated like wildfire. Articles with titles like The Daughter They Couldn't Silence and Family Erasure is Real, One Woman's Fight for Identity trended nationally. I got emails from strangers, survivors, former staff. One woman, a retired housekeeper who used to work for the Fens, simply wrote, "We knew. We all knew. I'm sorry." But I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. Because the court wasn't the only place Celeste planned to fight, and she had one last card left to play. The room was too quiet, one of those soundproof conference spaces that made every breath feel louder than it should. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly above my head, and across from me, Celeste sat perfectly composed in a beige suit and pearl earrings, like nothing about this moment threatened her. But her eyes were different. There was no fire in them, no smugness, just calculation. Cold, clipped calculation. Her lawyer slid the document across the table toward me. It was crisp, freshly printed. I didn't even need to read it. "Sign this," Celeste said, voice smooth as glass. "You withdraw your claim to the will, issue a formal statement of closure, and I make all of this disappear." I stared at the pen she'd placed beside the folder. Neatly aligned. A final attempt at control, dressed as generosity. "And if I don't?" I asked. She tilted her head. "Then you continue down this exhausting path. Court. Press your little supporters, eventually move on. The spotlight fades. You're left holding a name no one will care about." She said it like a warning. I heard it as a promise. I didn't move. I didn't touch the pen. Instead, I let myself drift. Just for a moment. Back to that night. 6 years old. The gas station's flickering lights. My legs numb from cold. My hands shaking as I waited. My voice cracked from saying the same thing over and over. "Please come back." I hadn't realized until this moment that I wasn't speaking to him anymore. I was speaking to me. To the little girl I used to be. The one who needed someone, anyone, to tell her she mattered. Present-day me closed my eyes. For the first time, I whispered it back. "I'm here." I opened my eyes and looked directly at Celeste. "I'm not here for your money," I said. "I'm not here for your legacy. I'm here because you tried to erase me, and I want my name back." Her jaw clenched, but she said nothing. "I was erased from your family portrait, your estate plans, your memory, but not from reality. I exist, I survived, and you don't get to silence me again." I pushed the paper back across the table, untouched. Celeste flinched. Not visibly, but I saw it in her fingers. The tiny tremble she couldn't suppress. For the first time, she didn't look like a woman in charge. She looked cornered. 2 days later, the judge ruled in my favor. The will was upheld. I was legally reinstated as a rightful heir. Celeste's claims were dismissed. There was no jail time, no dramatic courtroom fall from grace. She left through a back exit, her lawyer shielding her from cameras. But she lost something she couldn't buy back. Her version of the story. And for a woman like Celeste, that was the real punishment. That night, I stood outside Haven House, the porch light casting long shadows across the street. I held a mug of tea in both hands, warm against the December air. Snow fell in lazy flurries around me. I closed my eyes and whispered. Not to her, not to the world, but to the little girl inside me, still waiting outside that gas station. You survived. You were never crazy. And they don't get to write your ending. I won the fight. But healing, that would take a different kind of strength. The headlines faded faster than I expected. One week, I was front-page material. Estranged daughter reclaims her name. And the next, I was just another story buried beneath the next scandal, the next outrage. I didn't miss the noise. Haven House returned to its rhythm. Kids laughing down the hallway, paint-smudged hands during art therapy, mismatched shoes piled by the music room door. People smiled when they passed me. Some hugged me. Others called me inspiring. I thanked them all, but inside I felt quiet. Not empty. Not exactly. Just still. It turns out winning doesn't put the pieces back. It doesn't unweight the hours I sat in the cold outside that gas station. It doesn't pull back the years of silence, of doubt, of shame. It just ends the war. Celeste never showed her face again. No press conferences, no interviews, no public rebuttal. She didn't even issue a formal apology. She didn't need to. People knew. That was enough. Kian cut contact, moved into a small apartment near the edge of town, and started teaching music therapy at Haven House. We worked in the same building most days, and sometimes we'd share lunch. But we didn't talk about her, not anymore. We just lived. I got used to the quiet, learned to enjoy the mundane. Grocery shopping with Ruthin on Saturdays. Early walks before the kids arrived. The smell of vanilla candles mixed with poster paint and hot cocoa in the winter. I stopped waiting for justice. I started looking for peace. One night in early January, I found a letter in the back of my closet. It was written in my handwriting, years old. Folded, worn, unsent. It was addressed to Celeste. Page after page of questions. Why did you leave me? Why didn't you stop him? Why did you hate me for existing? I read it once, then again. Then I fed it into the fireplace. The paper curled and blackened, its edges crumbling before the flames even touched the ink. And just like that, I let it go. Some answers, I decided, don't matter anymore. A few days later, I walked past the gas station. The same one, same cracked concrete, same tired signage buzzing faintly under the morning sky. I hadn't been back since the night everything shattered. I was going to keep walking. Then I saw her. A little girl, no more than 6, sitting on the curb beside a rusty pump, arms wrapped around her knees. Alone. My breath caught in my throat. I walked over slowly, heart pounding, voice tight. "Hey, sweetie, are you okay?" She looked up. Big brown eyes, flushed cheeks. "I'm waiting for my mom. She just went inside." And sure enough, a woman stepped out of the convenience store a few seconds later, calling her name. The girl smiled and ran to her without a second glance. I stood there, watching. And then I cried. Not out of pain, not out of anger, but because something inside me finally let go. The little girl who had once waited alone wasn't waiting anymore. She had me now. Not every wound disappears, but some become maps, showing us how to walk away and never return. I used to believe that survival was about staying invisible, about not causing waves, not asking questions, not needing more than I was given. But I've learned something. Silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the people who benefit from your silence. If you've ever been made to feel like you didn't belong, even in your own family, let me say this to you. You do. You matter. Not because someone else says so, not because you're perfect, but because you are here. And no one gets to rewrite your story but you. In life, we don't always get apologies. We don't always get justice wrapped up in a bow. But we can choose peace. We can choose growth. We can choose to stop bleeding for people who never even tried to stop the cut. If this story made you feel something, if it reminded you of a truth you've been carrying, or a lie you're tired of living under, don't just scroll past. Let's talk. Tell me, what would you say to your younger self if you could go back? Drop a comment below. If this story touched your heart, leave a 1 or let me know where you're watching from. If it made you uncomfortable, I'd still love to hear why. Maybe that's where the healing starts. And hey, if you made it this far, you're part of this community now, so don't miss what's next. Hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next story that might just speak to your soul. Because sometimes a stranger's story helps us finally understand our own. Hi, my name's Vincent. At my sister's wedding. They sat me alone by the door. They served me leftovers, while everyone else had champagne and caviar. Then she leaned in, smiling, and said, "You should feel honored." But it wasn't just the food. It was the years of silence, the exhibitions they sabotaged, the photos they stole, The love they pretended was mine. Until I stopped being useful. They dressed me in shame for decades. But what happens when the forgotten daughter brings the truth to the party? I read the message twice, then a third time. Can you shoot my wedding? Of course for free. Your family. It came from Jessa, casually tossed into our barely there text thread like she was asking me to pick up milk. I stared at it, thumb hovering over the reply button, but I didn't type a word. It wasn't just what she said. It was everything underneath. That familiar current of entitlement, of being needed only when it served someone else's storyline. I didn't respond. 2 days later, the phone rang. Mom's name flashed across the screen. I should have let it go to voicemail, but I didn't. I pressed answer and said nothing. "Vincent," she began, syrupy and tight. "I know you got Jess's message. It's important to her, to all of us. You do understand what family means, don't you?" I stayed silent. "I mean, after everything we've done for you, this is the least you can do. We're not asking much. Just show up, be supportive, like a sister should." She hung up before I could respond. Or maybe she never expected me to. Show up, be supportive. The irony tasted bitter. I arrived at the venue early. Alone, of course. No date, no +1. Just my small navy dress and a quiet kind of armor I'd learned to wear around them. The St. Augustine Church looked like a page torn from a wedding magazine. White roses, soft gold drapery, floating petals along the aisle. Perfect. Too perfect. It didn't belong to people like me, even if we shared blood. At the check-in desk, the woman with the headset and tight smile flipped through a list. "Name?" "Vincent Ward." She paused. "Oh, you're not." Her eyes scanned the page again. "Ah. Table 17. She pointed toward the far back, an awkward little nook near the exit doors. It wasn't even a real table, just a two-top with one chair, no name card. I gave her a thin smile, thanked her, and walked over. I could have asked questions. I could have made a scene, but I didn't. That wasn't my role in this family. I sat down, crossed my legs, and tried to breathe. Across the room, a sea of curated elegance flowed. Designer gowns, champagne glasses, practiced laughter. Cameras flashed, people hugged. No one looked at me. A waiter passed with a tray of champagne flutes. He skipped my table. It felt like sitting inside a portrait, where someone forgot to paint you in. I thought back to Jessa's 25th birthday. I had flown in from a shoot in Chicago, missing deadlines and losing a client just to make it on time. I brought her a limited edition art print, signed by the photographer she idolized in college. She didn't even unwrap it. That night, her boyfriend gave her a Cartier bracelet, and suddenly I no longer existed. Why did I even come? Maybe out of habit, maybe out of guilt, or maybe, somewhere buried deep, a desperate flicker of hope that one day I'd actually be seen. That day hadn't come, and today wasn't going to be it either. Jessa walked by in her robe, hair pinned, makeup glowing. She saw me, I know she did. But she looked right through me and kept walking. My phone buzzed. A client confirming the final approval of a magazine cover featuring my latest photo series. A milestone in my career. I locked the screen without replying. My name wasn't even printed on the seating chart. Not that they forgot. They never intended to include me. But when the appetizers came out, the message was even clearer. Across the ballroom, silver trays gleamed under crystal chandeliers. Waiters floated like clockwork, white gloves, synchronized steps, delivering artistry on plates, foie gras with berry glaze, lobster bisque in porcelain bowls, truffle risotto that smelled like money and praise. One by one, the guests at nearby tables murmured delighted reactions. At my table, the only sound was the clink of a single fork hitting porcelain. A waiter stopped beside me, avoiding my eyes. He placed a plate down, cold, unevenly arranged, and silent. It held half a dinner roll and a mess of wilted greens, maybe arugula that had seen better days. No dressing, no fork, just shame served with a side of nothing. I looked at it for a long time. The couple at table 16 glanced over, then quickly turned back to their conversation, their laughter suddenly louder. One of them whispered something. I didn't catch it, but I felt it. They fed me scraps, on purpose, not by accident, not an oversight, a decision. I'd spent years trying to convince myself that this family didn't mean to hurt me, that their distance was cluelessness, not cruelty. But this was artfully staged. They didn't want me to feel included. They wanted me to feel grateful just to be tolerated. A shadow crossed my table. Hope everything's okay over here, Jessa said, her voice sugar-coated and echoing through her champagne smile. She wore white like it was armor, her curls pinned, her makeup flawless. I'd photographed women like her before. Women who knew exactly how to turn softness into spectacle. We kept it simple for you, she went on, lowering her voice just slightly. Didn't want to overwhelm. I know you're used to more laid-back stuff. My hand tightened around the edge of the table. Jessa leaned closer, almost whispering. Smile for the camera, sis. Wouldn't want to ruin the aesthetic. Then she walked off, her heels clicking like punctuation. Her laughter dissolved into the hum of the orchestra, and I was left with the half-roll and a silence more deafening than music. I pushed the plate away. The air smelled like rosemary and champagne, but I had no appetite. Not for food, not for fake kindness, not for pretending anymore. My mind drifted, pulled back to a memory I never asked to remember. Thanksgiving, 2018. I had spent the whole night before baking. A peach pie with a flaky crust, made from scratch. I drove 4 hours in traffic to be there on time. I walked in proud, offering it to Mom. She barely looked up from the stove. Store-bought crust? Vincent, really? No, I said. It's homemade. She shrugged, turned her back, and called out to Jessa, who had just posted a filtered photo of Mom on Instagram with the caption number Queen Rochelle. Rochelle's eyes sparkled. Now that's thoughtful. They ate Jessa's Instagram praise like dessert. My pie stayed untouched. I remember sitting at the end of that table, listening to them talk over me, around me. I smiled through it then. Thought maybe I was just imagining it. Now I knew better. Back in the ballroom, someone started giving a toast. I didn't hear the words. My hand moved to my purse, fingers grazing the small silver USB tucked inside the lining. It was warm against my skin, almost pulsing. I wasn't going to ruin anything today. I hadn't come here to start a fight. But maybe. I hadn't come to sit quietly either. They fed me scraps on purpose. But they don't know I brought something far less edible and far more dangerous. The message on Jessa's phone glowed like fire through glass. I wouldn't have noticed it if the guy beside me hadn't dropped his own. As he bent down to retrieve it, the screen next to mine lit up on the table. Jessa's phone, left unattended for just a moment. Can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine, wedding or not. Tobin, his name was at the top. I blinked. The world didn't tilt or crack open. It just stopped. I looked up, across the room, and there she was, Jessa, curled into Emery's side like a romantic comedy heroine. She was laughing at something he'd said. Perfect, effortless, deadly. My grip on my clutch tightened so hard it left imprints on my fingers. The phone dimmed and the moment passed, but the words were burned into me. She was cheating. No, she was cheating. With Tobin. And not just before the wedding. Tonight. The audacity. The casualness. The complete, unapologetic filth of it all. I watched as she kissed Emery on the cheek and leaned in for a selfie with his mother. And it hit me like a second slap. I wasn't just invisible to them. I was their cover. The quiet sibling. The one they used to deflect attention while they played pretend. I stood slowly, needing air, needing distance. I walked past the bar and slipped into the side hallway near the restrooms, pressing my back against the cool wall. But instead of relief, another memory clawed its way to the surface. 3 years ago. Berlin. It was going to be my breakout. A solo photography exhibition at a respected European gallery. Contracts were nearly signed, flights were being discussed, and then, radio silence. The gallery director sent a short email. Unfortunately, we are no longer able to proceed. Best of luck. I spiraled, questioned myself, blamed myself. Months later, a mentor from my graduate program pulled me aside after a panel. Look, Vincent, she said carefully. Someone made calls. Someone high profile. Said you were emotionally unstable, difficult to work with, not commercially viable. She didn't have to say who. Dad never cared about my work. He didn't even try to understand it. But sabotaging me? I hadn't imagined he'd go that far. And maybe that's the worst part. I hadn't imagined it. I'd trusted him, despite every sign that I shouldn't. I returned to the reception hall, numb, moving like I was underwater. At table 17, my exile corner, I sat down and stared blankly ahead. The applause around me blurred. Another toast, another self-congratulating lie. I pulled out my phone. An email had come through from the editorial team at National Photojournal. Congratulations, Vincent. We've selected your portrait series for our spring cover. Exceptional work. My first cover. The kind of thing you tell your family about. The kind of moment they throw parties for when it's someone else. I locked my screen without replying. I looked around. Not a single face here would care. Not one person would cheer. Rochelle would say it was luck. Dad would say, nice hobby. Jessa? She'd probably post a selfie with I opened my clutch and stared at the small USB inside. It was cool against my fingertips. I could feel the line being drawn inside me. Not in anger, not even in grief, but in truth. Clean and cold. Mom once told me, you owe us. We've given you everything. And Jessa, during one of our last real conversations, if you could even call it that, had laughed and said, let's be real, Vincent. You're just background. You make the rest of us look good. They thought I was the silence that framed the picture. She wore white. I had the truth. And my truth was finally louder than their silence. Mom cornered me near the restroom. Her lipstick was perfect, her threats even more so. She'd timed it well, right before the speeches, when no one was looking. A smile on her face, hand delicately placed on my arm, voice wrapped in sugar. Vincent, darling, let's not ruin the evening, she whispered. I said nothing. She leaned closer, breath scented with expensive perfume and polished control. If you say or show anything tonight, consider your career done. I made one phone call before. I'll make 10 this time. Do you understand me? I didn't flinch, but my pulse was screaming in my ears. She stepped back, smile still glued in place. You're here as a guest, not a martyr. Keep it classy. Then she turned, heels tapping against the marble like a gavel. Case closed. I stood there, back against the cool tile, trying to steady my breath. My mother didn't scream. She sliced, and I was bleeding beneath the surface. But this wasn't new. 6 years ago, I'd landed my first gallery opportunity in Manhattan. A real one. My name on the wall. My work, raw portraits of working-class women, centered and seen. Then Rochelle called. Change of plans, she said. We're doing family portraits that weekend. Grandma will be in town. You know how rare that is? I've already committed, Mom. The gallery's confirmed. Oh, please, she cut in. We're your family, Vincent. This is more important than a few pictures on a wall. I canceled the show. She didn't thank me. Grandma didn't even like the photos. The gallery gave my slot to someone else. I didn't get another solo invite for over a year. That was the first time I realized, in my family, love was conditional, and sacrifice was never remembered, only expected. Back at table 17, I sat down again. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly as the MC tapped the mic. The crowd hushed. I opened my clutch and stared at the USB inside. It was still there, tucked in like a secret, like a truth too sharp to carry in my hands. Rochelle's words echoed. You owe us! I closed my fingers around the metal. No, I whispered. You owe me. I scanned the room. Jessa was glowing, sipping champagne, her dress shimmering like deceit. Dad laughed too loudly at a joke no one else heard. Rochelle nodded graciously to distant relatives, as if none of it was unraveling. A waiter leaned toward me. "Ma'am, are you all right?" "I will be," I said. He moved on. I didn't watch him go. My eyes locked on the stage. This time, I won't bow. I won't beg. I will speak. But first, let me remind you what she stole before she wore that veil. It was 3 weeks ago. I was sorting prints for a client when an email came through from a woman I hadn't heard from in years, a gallery client from LA. We'd worked together on a small campaign back in 2019. "Hey, just curious, wasn't this your shot from the Venice Boardwalk series? It's in Jessa's new press kit, no credit line." She attached a screenshot. There it was. My photo, my composition, the golden hour lighting, the color grading only I used. And front and center, Jessa, looking over her shoulder in a white dress, laughing into nothing. My art, her brand. No mention of me, no byline, no tag. I stared at the image so long my eyes watered. Then I closed the laptop and walked away. I didn't scream. I didn't call her. I just remembered. 2 years ago, I did confront her. Back when I still believed conversations could fix things. "Jessa, you used my work without permission," I said, holding up her latest magazine spread. She didn't blink. "It's just a photo, Vincent. Relax. People care about the model, not the background." The background. That word clung to me like mildew. It followed me into this wedding, into every interaction I had with them. I wasn't their sister. I was a prop, a supporting character in their curated lives. And yet I was the one who had created the image, who framed her face, who saw her through the lens, even when she refused to see me at all. Tonight, I sat quietly at table 17, the USB still inside my clutch, nestled beside a lip balm and folded tissue. The orchestra played something light and classical, perfect for a fairy tale evening. I stood. My hands were steady now. I walked toward the front of the room, toward the AV booth near the corner. The MC was reviewing a printed schedule. I stopped beside him and said simply, "There's one more story the guests need to see before the final speech." He blinked. I don't think that's on the... It is now." He hesitated, his eyes flicking toward the stage manager. "I'm not asking," I said. "Either you cue it, or I will." He swallowed hard, then nodded slowly. "Where's the file?" I handed him the USB. As he turned toward the tech crew, I turned back to the room. A sea of faces, all pretending nothing was off-kilter, that everything was orchestrated perfectly. They didn't see the wires unraveling beneath the floor. I walked slowly back to my table, sat down, straightened my silverware, even though I wouldn't be eating. Not tonight. Across the ballroom, I saw Mom whisper something to Dad. Jessa was mid-conversation with one of the bridesmaids. She still looked flawless, still perfectly unaware. The lights flickered. The projector screen lowered. People murmured. A few heads turned. A ripple of confusion spread from table to table, a low, rustling sound of expectation. I folded my hands in my lap. This is not revenge, it's release. The screen flickered. Then the first frame appeared, and Jessa's face drained of color. Gasps rippled across the ballroom like shattered glass. The image on screen showed Jessa at her engagement party, arm in arm with Emery, both smiling for the crowd. But within seconds, the video shifted. A clip caught her stepping away, glancing at her phone, smirking as her fingers tapped quickly. Then the message appeared, crystal clear. "Tobin, can't wait till tonight. Just remember, you're mine, wedding or not." Time-stamped, dated, undeniable. Jessa's mouth dropped open. Emery sat frozen, then slowly turned his head to look at her. I didn't need to be near them to feel the heat of his realization. He wasn't the groom. He was the shield. The next scene cut to my voice, calm, precise. They dressed me in silence. I returned the favor with clarity. Clips followed, short, stinging, Thanksgiving. Rochelle tossing my homemade pie into the trash, saying, "Next time, buy from Whole Foods. At least their crust is consistent." A voicemail from her a year later, telling me, "We'll reschedule your show. Grandma will be in town. You know how fragile she is. Be flexible." She never rescheduled. The gallery gave the slot away. Then a call recording. Dad's voice, measured, businesslike. "She's talented, yes, but volatile. Not someone we'd trust to carry a brand. Her work's emotional, not marketable." It was his voice. No ambiguity, just sabotage dressed in professional detachment. Another cut. Jessa at a launch party, sipping wine on a rooftop, camera rolling. "She's so dramatic. I mean, art's cute and all, but we're the ones with real jobs, real lives, right?" Laughter. Then silence. The final clip zoomed in on the wedding seating chart. Table 17. One chair, no name. I stood still, letting the room inhale what I had exhaled. Emery stood slowly, lips parted, but no words. He turned to Jessa and said, barely above a whisper, "Did you ever love me?" She reached for his hand, mascara smudged and cracking. Wait!" But he stepped away. Just one step, and then another, and he was gone. The Winston matriarch rose, spine straight and voice like ice. "You tried to attach us to this disgrace?" She didn't wait for an answer. Neither did her husband. Rochelle fumbled to stand, stammering something about misrepresentation. Walter hadn't moved. He stared at the tablecloth like it had betrayed him, too. I walked to the microphone without invitation. No shaking, no smile. "You called me dramatic, difficult, disposable, but really, I was just inconvenient." My voice rang clear. "To everyone who watched and said nothing, congratulations. You no longer get to pretend. You saw it, you heard it, and you'll carry it with you." I scanned the crowd, their eyes wide, many lowering their heads. Not out of shame, but because they knew I had told the truth, and truth is heavy. "You dressed me in silence. Tonight, I wear my own voice." I stepped back. A beat of silence held. Then, one clap, two, then a wave. It wasn't thunderous. It wasn't a standing ovation. It was real. I turned, ready to leave the stage, when I heard Jessa's voice behind me, small, shaky, trying to hold on to whatever illusion she could salvage. "What did you do to me?" I didn't turn around. "I just stopped letting you do it to me. But the thing about people like my sister, they don't fall quietly. They claw, they scream, sometimes in silence, sometimes in smiles, but always in chaos." Emery stood, his expression flat, not angry, not confused, just done. He slipped the silver ring off his finger with a quiet finality and placed it on the edge of the table. "You don't even understand love," he said. "Just performance." No one breathed. Jessa's hand trembled as she reached for him, but he had already turned. No fanfare, no accusations. Just a man walking away from a staged life. The Winston matriarch rose next, her pearls stiff against her neck. "This family," she announced, "has no honor. You nearly tied us to fraud. We will not be associated with this." Her husband gave a single nod before they followed Emery out of the room. Quiet, clean exits. Surgical, devastating. Guests murmured, some in pity, some in satisfaction. A few picked up their jackets and slowly made their way toward the doors. No one was dancing anymore. Jessa collapsed into a chair. Her dress, once a symbol of everything she'd curated, now looked heavy, wrinkled, and wrong. Her makeup smeared in streaks across her cheekbones. She didn't speak. She just sat. My phone buzzed on the table. A text from one of Jessa's former brand reps. "Hi, Jessa. Due to unexpected PR circumstances, we'll be discontinuing the skincare campaign effective immediately." Another came seconds later. "We need to pause all pending content. Too much exposure, not the good kind." And then her publicist, loud and blunt on speakerphone. "Jessa, you're radioactive. Sponsors are pulling out fast. You need to go offline, like now. I didn't gloat. I didn't even smile. It wasn't victory, it was gravity. That's what truth does when it finally lands. I stepped into a back hallway, needing air. Instead, I got Rochelle. She blocked my way, clutching a drink in one hand, mascara flaking beneath her eyes, rage sharpened by embarrassment. "You humiliated us," she hissed. "You humiliated your sister. Is this what you wanted? To destroy your family?" "No," I said. "I just wanted to be treated like your daughter." Her eyes narrowed. "You always make everything about you." Walter's voice broke through from behind her. "Enough." He stepped forward, his tone low but unshakable. "This family broke a long time ago, Rochelle. Vincent just stopped pretending." She stared at him, stunned, like she didn't recognize the man standing beside her. Neither did I. And yet, somehow, in that moment, he looked more human than he ever had. Rochelle didn't speak again. She turned, tossed the drink onto a nearby table, and walked out. Guests were now openly leaving. A few offered me nods, some respectful, some just awkward. The ones who stayed were quiet. The ones who left would carry the story in whispers. I returned to table 17. The USB was still there, tucked under a napkin. Empty now. All of its secrets spilled, and none left to keep. I held it in my hand and closed my fingers around it. My body felt light. Not triumphant, not even proud, just unchained. I looked around the room. My sister slouched in a chair like the air had left her lungs. Rochelle was gone. Walter stood by a window, arms folded, watching a world he'd built crack and sink. I didn't win, but I ended the game. The next morning, my mother called me. Not to apologize, to beg. Her voice was scratchy, thin, trying to sound steady. "I think we all said things we didn't mean," she offered. I didn't respond. "Can we meet? Just talk. Please, Vincent." I closed my eyes and breathed in slowly. I recognized the tone. Not remorse, desperation. She didn't want to make peace. She wanted to contain the fallout. "I've already said what I needed to," I told her. "Publicly." There was a pause. Then, quieter. "We've reflected, Walter and I. We want to move forward as a family. Your version of family isn't something I need anymore." Click. Later that week, I received a letter in the mail. Handwritten, unusually neat for my father. It didn't say, "I'm sorry," it said, "We hope someday you'll understand what we tried to do." That was the last time I heard from either of them. And honestly, that was enough. I didn't need a reconciliation. I needed a release. And I had found it. But not everything that ends stays gone. It was a rainy Tuesday in March when Jessa showed up at the front door of my studio. No makeup. Hair pulled back. Jacket soaked. "I'm not here to explain," she said. "Good," I replied. I need work." I stood in the doorway for a long time. She looked smaller than I remembered. Her heels were gone. Her voice no longer held knives. "You know," I said, "you could have called first. I didn't think you'd pick up." She wasn't wrong. I let her in. The studio smelled like paint and varnish. The floors were clean. My assistant Caleb was editing prints in the back room. Jessa stood awkwardly in the front gallery space, surrounded by portraits of strangers who had trusted me more in minutes than she had in 30 years. "I don't need you to forgive me," she said. I need to start over." I believed her, not fully, but enough to take a risk. Pause. Long pause. I studied her face. Not for beauty this time, for intent. "You'll show up early," I said. "You'll clean everything. You'll be invisible for a while." She nodded. "And you'll earn your way into the frame this time." That night, I stood on the rooftop of the studio. The city was soft below me, breathing in shadows and streetlights. Caleb joined me, mug of tea in his hand. "So," he asked, "what's your next project?" I thought for a moment. The wind tugged at my sleeves. "Portraits of rebirth," I said, but not from ashes, from clarity. And yet, clarity doesn't mean the wound is gone. I stood alone on the rooftop of my studio, the Brooklyn skyline soft in the distance, city lights flickering like quiet thoughts. The air was cool, but not cold. Spring was somewhere between the buildings, still deciding if it wanted to stay. In my hand was an old photo I hadn't looked at in years. Me and Jessa. I was maybe 10. She, 12. She stood front and center in a white ballet costume, hair in curls, perfect posture. I was in the background, slightly out of focus, cropped at the shoulder, smiling like I wasn't supposed to be there. I traced the edge of the picture with my thumb. They never saw me clearly, but I do. Inside the studio, Caleb was muttering about a crooked frame. I could hear the sound of tape being pulled, the soft thump of a print being adjusted. "Hey, Vincent," he called. "This one's a little off, but I think it's honest." I laughed. "Good, leave it that way." Guests were starting to arrive for the opening night of my new series, Reborn in Focus. Some were collectors, some were friends, all were chosen. Liana brought over a tray of sparkling water and tiny lemon cookies. Someone cued music, something soft and simple, and in the middle of the room, someone raised a glass. "To the family you make," they said. Everyone echoed it. Glasses clinked. I stood in the center of the photo this time, not because I asked to be there, but because they pulled me in. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of Jessa. She was quietly sweeping near the back corner, where guests wouldn't notice her. She didn't look up. She didn't expect applause. And she didn't run. Later, when the last guest had left and silence returned like an old friend, I checked my phone. One new voicemail. "Vincent, it's your mother. I know you don't owe us anything, but I hope someday you'll forgive me. Not for me. For you." I didn't delete it, but I didn't call back either. Some things aren't meant to be repaired. Just remembered, then released. I walked to my private workspace in the back. The walls smelled faintly of varnish and steel. My favorite chair creaked as I sat down. Across from me, centered perfectly on the wall, was a new photograph. Black and white. My own face. Sharp. Bold. Unapologetic. Underneath, handwritten in ink. Truth. Framed by my own hand. No more asking to be seen. No more waiting for a seat. I built the table. Maybe you saw a piece of yourself in me. Maybe you've spent years shrinking at the edge of someone else's story, waiting for a seat, waiting to be enough, waiting to be seen. But here's what I've learned, and I say this as someone who's walked through silence, shame, and survival. You don't need their permission to matter. You don't need to keep bleeding just because they call it family. And you sure as hell don't need to sit at a table where your name is missing. You can build your own. I did. Not out of revenge, but out of truth, out of clarity, out of the quiet kind of love we offer ourselves when no one else will. So now I'm asking you, what truth have you been swallowing for too long? What story is still stuck in your throat, waiting to be told? If this story stirred something in you, let me know in the comments. Drop a 1 if this hit home, or tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to know. And hey, if this wasn't your thing, I respect that too. Tell me what didn't land for you and where you're tuning in from. This space is for real people, real stories. So if you believe in truth, growth, and the kind of endings that don't always come with closure, but come with freedom, then subscribe to this channel. Thanks for watching. Take care of your story.